Chapter 510. Murong Yu advanced an extremely fast speed with Chao Ping, an immortal monarch expert. Although they encountered a few battles along the way with immortal monarch sea beasts. Although Chao Ping had just reached the immortal monarch realm, his strength was extremely strong. Even if he encountered a few immortal monarch experts, he still managed to reach the depths of the Death Sea without any danger. This was an extremely huge island with a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. On the island, the dense death chi had already become as black as ink. At this point, even Chao Ping found it extremely difficult to resist the death chi. This was the center of the Death Sea, where the god's relic appeared. However, what made Murong Yu feel strange was that there was no one on the Death Sea. Of course, Murong Yu's divine will and vision were greatly suppressed. He could only see a few miles away. Within the range of his vision, he could not see any immortal experts. One had to know that there were at least a few 100 million immortals here. However, an island with a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles was still too big for a few 100 million immortals. Entering the island and casually hiding, under such circumstances, it was extremely difficult to find them. Swoosh! At this moment, a figure quickly swept past Murong Yu and Chao Ping and rushed directly to the island. However, the moment this person stepped onto the island, his figure instantly disappeared. Seeing this, Murong Yu and Chao Ping frowned slightly. Chao Ping, what did you find? Murong Yu looked at Chao Ping and asked with a frown. Chao Ping was an immortal monarch expert, and his strength was much higher than Murong Yu's. If it was an ordinary mystic immortal, they would have to address Chao Ping as senior. However, Chao Ping had been cured by Murong Yu. As one of Murong Yu's former patients, Murong Yu could directly call Chao Ping by his name. Chao Ping naturally didn't have any objections to this. Chao Ping shook his head. That person is an immortal king. If he wasn't killed instantly, then he must have been teleported to another place. If he was killed, it wouldn't have been done so cleanly. Therefore, I speculate that this person should have been teleported to another space. If I'm not wrong, the people who entered this island before have already been teleported away. They're not on this island at all. Murong Yu nodded. His thoughts were similar to Chao Ping's. I believe that the relic is not in the Dead Sea, but in another space. Let's go and take a look. Otherwise, if we are late, there will be nothing left. Murong Yu said with a smile. Chao Ping nodded. Since they had already appeared here, they would definitely not back down, even if there were unknown dangers in that space. However, as immortals, as cultivators, they were already going against the will of the heavens. Cultivation was a kind of risk to begin with. Later on, it might be a random teleportation, and we might be separated. Mr. Murong, you have to be careful. Chao Ping turned to look at Murong Yu and said. Murong Yu nodded. Then they both flew down. Whoosh! Murong Yu felt the scenery in front of him change. Then he found that he had already left the island and appeared in an unfamiliar environment. This is? Murong Yu had already taken out the Hichu Luo Shu and covered the surface. However, when he teleported over, he did not find anyone around him. After standing in place for a while, Murong Yu began to size up the surrounding environment. Black chi lingered, and the atmosphere was deathly. Like the island, this place was filled with black, deathly chi. However, because of the Hichu Luo Shu, the deathly chi could not pass through the Hichu Luo Shu and attack Murong Yu. The Hichu Luo Shu could effectively block the deathly chi. In other words, even without the power of life, Murong Yu could still live well here. Murong Yu tried to extend his divine sense, and immediately found that his divine sense was not so restricted. Murong Yu's divine sense could extend up to 100 miles away, but it could not go any further. During this process, Murong Yu found that this seemed to be a huge palace. He was now inside a palace. Outside this palace, there were countless buildings. Palaces, houses, gardens, training grounds, squares, and so on. Murong Yu carefully and quickly circled around the vicinity, but he was more and more shocked. This place was simply like a sect. Except for Murong Yu, there was no one near Murong Yu. Other than that, The structure of the buildings here was similar to that of an ordinary sect. Could it be that this is really the ruins of an ancient sect? Moronyu was very surprised. These buildings were very intact, and it did not seem like a big battle had happened. However, if this was a big ancient sect, then where were the disciples of this sect? According to this scale, there were at least hundreds of thousands of disciples in this sect. But now that the ruins of this sect were preserved, then where did the disciples of this sect go? Did they mysteriously disappear? And all of them? After circling around the underground palace, Moronyu did not find any danger for the time being, of course, except for the pitch-black deathly chi. Jiqing, how does it feel to be summoned? Morongyu's divine sense probed into the Hichu Luo Shu and asked. In the Hichu Luo Shu, the summoning in Zhao Jiqing's heart would not disappear, and the closer Moronyu got to the island, the stronger it became. It's very strong. I feel that the thing that summoned me is here. Moron, let me out. Zhao Jiqing fell and then said, Okay. Moronyu first explained the situation in the underground palace to Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing. Then, after infusing them with life force, he released them from the Hichu Luo Shu. Pay attention to the life force. Once you find that the life force is used up too much, immediately inform me. After the two women appeared beside him, Moronyu said with a dignified expression. He did not want the two women to be attacked by the deathly chi. The deathly chi was really terrifying, and with the strength of the two women, once they were attacked, they would definitely die in a short time. The two women nodded solemnly, then observed the surrounding environment. Big gangster, didn't you say that at least hundreds of millions of people entered the depths of the Death Sea? Why is there no one except the three of us? Yu Mengqing frowned and said to Moronyu after observing for a while. Moronyu immediately said his guess. This should be the ruins of an ancient sect. However, when we entered the island, we should have been randomly teleported. Chao Ping and I set foot on the island at the same time, but I don't know where Chao Ping has been teleported to. Even if it was a random teleportation, hundreds of millions of experts came in. You can't be the only one who was teleported to this underground palace, right? Could it be that they were all killed in the process of being teleported? Or that they were all killed when they came in here? This thought suddenly appeared in Yu Mengqing's mind, and then she was shocked by her own thought. It shouldn't be like that, right? Zhao Jiqing's eyes revealed a look of horror. If it was as Yu Mengqing speculated, then there would be a lot of deaths and injuries this time. It should be known that in this opening of the god's relic, besides those high and mighty immortal emperors, there were even existences that surpassed immortal emperors that entered. We can't rule out this possibility. However, it's also possible that they were teleported to other places. That's not what we need to consider. Since we were teleported here, it means that we are fated to be here. It's very likely that there's a great opportunity waiting for us. Jiqing, do you feel anything? Moronyu suddenly asked. However, Zhao Jiqing did not answer. Moronyu could not help but feel strange. He then looked at Zhao Jiqing. Moronyu jumped in fright when he saw what was inside. At this moment, Zhao Jiqing's face was full of confusion. Her eyes seemed to be out of focus as she stared in front of her. There was no color in them. She turned a deaf ear to his words. Sister Jiqing, what's wrong? Don't scare me. Yu Mengqing also looked over and was immediately shocked. Morongyu's heart suddenly sank. A bad feeling appeared in his heart. Immediately, he shouted in a low voice, Jiqing, wake up! Zhao Jiqing's delicate body shook violently. Her eyes regained their color, and the confusion on her face disappeared instantly. What's wrong? Zhao Jiqing looked at Moronyu and Yu Mengqing, who both looked worried. Sister Jiqing, you're finally awake. Do you know that you almost scared me to death just now? Yu Mengqing said in surprise when she saw that Zhao Jiqing had woken up. Mengqing, what happened to me just now? Zhao Jiqing asked, puzzled. So, Yu Mengqing told her what had happened just now. Jiqing, what happened just now? What did you feel? Moronyu asked in a low voice. Just now, the calling was very strong. It was as if someone was talking to me from the other side, asking me to go over. Zhao Jiqing pointed in the direction she had been looking and said slowly, Someone seemed to be talking to you, asking you to go over. Even so, why were you so confused and absent-minded in an instant? Murong said with a gloomy face. In his heart, a bad feeling quickly arose. Perhaps this strong calling was not an opportunity, but a disaster. I felt that something was wrong. Zhao Jiqing pondered for a moment, then said. Murong also nodded. What's wrong? That strong calling must be an opportunity for you, Sister Jiqing. Yu Mengqing said with some confusion. Maybe. Murong forced a smile. If this was not an opportunity, but a disaster, then the three of them would be in for a tragedy. Chapter 511. Hundreds of millions of experts had entered the depths of the Dead Sea, but only Murong and the other two had been teleported to this underground palace, at least for now. No one knew where the others had been teleported to, and whether or not they were in danger had nothing to do with Murong and the other two. When Murong voiced his concerns, he didn't help Zhao Jiqing make a decision. This time, whether it was an opportunity or a disaster, as long as Zhao Jiqing made the decision, he would walk with Zhao Jiqing. Zhao Jiqing didn't answer immediately, and after thinking for a long time, she slowly said, Murong Mengqing. This time, since I've already come here, whether it's an opportunity or a disaster, I will walk on. Whether or not there is danger ahead, I will walk to the end. But you're different. This time it has nothing to do with you. The dangers ahead are unknown. If you come with me, if something happens, I will not be able to face you. Sister Jiqing, what are you saying? We are already here. How can we leave you alone? Besides, even if there is danger, it has nothing to do with you. This is my own decision. Yu Mengqing quickly said. This. Zhao Jiqing wanted to say something, but she was interrupted by Yu Mengqing. I have already decided. What I have decided, I will not change my mind. Yu Mengqing said with a slight smile. Big Ro, what about you? Yu Mengqing looked at Murong after saying that. Murong smiled. If I leave you two beauties in this underground palace, I will not be at ease. So I have decided to be your escort. Just as Murong decided to leave, Hichu's voice sounded in his mind. Young master, we have been cut off from the outside world. Murong face changed slightly. Hichu Luoshu's connection with the outside world was cut off, which meant that Hichu Luoshu had no connection with the formations outside the underground palace. With the connection cut off, Murong couldn't leave through Hichu Luoshu. Originally, entering the underground palace was full of unknown dangers. But Murong wasn't afraid. After all, he still had Hichu Luoshu to rely on. But now, he was told by Hichu that he couldn't leave through Hichu Luoshu. Murong face changed, and Murong couldn't help but take this seriously. The connection between Hichu Luoshu and Hichu Luoshu was cut off. This underground palace is really strange. A bad feeling arose in Murong's heart. I wonder if it's possible to use China's cultivation world source to return to the cultivation world? But of a Luoshu, not to Luoshu. Because of Luoshu, not to Luoshu. Since he couldn't feel it, it meant that the connection between them had been cut off. Hichu, can Hichu Luoshu still accept people? Murong asked in a deep voice. Yes, young master, Hichu said respectfully. Murong breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. If Hichu Luoshu could still accept people, it wouldn't be so scary. After all, if they encountered great danger, they could naturally enter the Hichu Luoshu world. As for Hichu, after Murong's strength continued to increase, he had already recognized Murong as his master. However, he only addressed him as young lord. In his heart, Zhao Yun was probably still more important. Although he had said so much to Hichu, they had only communicated with each other through telepathy for a moment. At this time, Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing finally reacted. What's wrong? Seeing Murong's face turn ugly, Zhao Jiqing couldn't help but ask with concern. Murong smiled slightly. Nothing, let's go. So, with Zhao Jiqing leading the way, Murong and the other two slowly walked forward. This underground palace was really too big, with a radius of about hundreds of thousands of miles. Even in ancient times, it was the scale of a big sect. However, in such a big underground palace, except for Murong and the other two, there was no fourth person, which made them feel a sense of horror. Big gangster, where do you think the people of this sect went? Did they all move away? Perhaps seeing the atmosphere was too oppressive, Yu Mengxing couldn't help but ask. Murong gave Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengxing a stream of life force. In this place where the death aura was particularly strong, the consumption of life force was very serious. In less than a cup of tea's time, Murong had to add new life force to the two women, otherwise their life force would be exhausted and then be attacked by the death aura. Maybe they were all killed. Murong said in a deep voice. Yu Mengxing was shocked. Looking at the scale of this sect, there are at least hundreds of thousands of disciples. If there are so many people, it's impossible for them all to be killed. Moreover, there are no traces of battle on the way. Indeed, along the way, all the nearby buildings and some others were intact and not damaged. The strength of the ancient Almighty was terrifying, killing people invisibly. Perhaps they didn't even need to make a move to kill them all. It's like a soul attack. Murong said with a smile. It shouldn't be like that, right? Yu Mengxing said with a pale face. She was frightened by Murong's words. Mengxing, don't listen to Murong's nonsense. If it's really a soul attack, even if the soul is destroyed, there will be a corpse left. Now the road is clean, not even a corpse. Zhao Jiqing rolled her eyes at Murong and then comforted Yu Mengxing. Zhao Jiqing's voice hadn't even fallen when Yu Mengxing suddenly exclaimed. At the same time, her figure flashed, and with a swoosh, she rushed to Murong's side, looking forward with a frightened face. What's wrong? You can't be scared just like this, right? Murong smiled. Corpses. So many corpses. Yu Mengxing looked forward with a pale face, and her voice was trembling. Murong and Zhao Jiqing quickly looked over, only to see a group of people in the same clothes standing in front of them. At this time, these people were standing on the continent, quietly looking at them. A gloomy feeling hit them in the face. When Murong met their gazes, his body couldn't help but tremble. He finally understood why Yu Mengxing's face was pale. It wasn't fear, but when Murong met the gazes of those people in front of them, that gloomy feeling seemed to go from his eyes to the bottom of his heart, making his heart and even his soul tremble. What the hell? Murong shouted angrily, protecting the two pale women behind him, and looked forward with a dignified expression. A group of people, or rather, they couldn't be called people. This was because they didn't have any aura of life on their bodies, only an intense aura of death. The gloomy aura constantly emitted from their bodies and swept over them like a tidal wave, causing Murong and the others to feel suffocated. At least hundreds of people blocked the road in front of them. Murong injected a large amount of life force into the two women, forcing away the gloomy aura. Hichu, if you feel that something is wrong, immediately put the three of us into the Hichu Luo Shu. Murong directly contacted Hichu in his mind. Yes, young master. Hichu respectfully replied. There is only one road in front of them, and the existence that summoned Zhao Jiqing had to go through this road. In other words, if they wanted to reach their destination, they had to go through the corpses in front of them. This is not easy. Murong's face darkened, although the people in front of them had been dead for many years. But Murong felt the aura of powerhouses from them. Living dead. These people might be living dead. They were definitely not weak living dead. What do we do? How can we go through this road? We can't fly, Yu Mengxing said with a slight frown. Previously, Murong had tried it. In the underground palace, his ability to fly was not restricted. However, he could only fly within a certain distance and at a low altitude. The entire underground palace seemed to have been set up with a layer of restriction, and it was a restriction that could not exceed that height. If Murong flew directly over, he would definitely become the target of those living dead when he passed through that intersection. At that time, those living dead would probably grind Murong into pieces with a round of dazzling attacks. As for Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing, they had not reached the golden immortal realm, so they could not fly. You two go into my spatial treasure first. Murong turned his head and said to the two women. Hichu Luoshu was really too heaven-defying. Even Zhao Jiqing and the others did not know the existence of Hichu Luoshu. They only knew that Murong had a spatial treasure that could carry living people. No, we'll stay here, Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing said in unison. They did not want Murong to take the risk alone. Don't worry. If I feel danger, I will enter the spatial treasure immediately. Now that you're here, you're distracting me, said Murong in a deep voice. Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing looked at each other. They both knew that Murong was telling the truth. Not only would they not help here, but they would also be a hindrance. Then Zhao Jiqing nodded and said, Okay, we'll enter the spatial treasure first. However, you must not force yourself. If you feel danger, you must enter the spatial treasure immediately. Murong nodded slightly and put the two women into the Hichu Luoshu world. Then, Murong took out the Hichu Luoshu again and covered the surface of his body. At the same time, Murong held the King Armament level battle saber and slowly walked toward the hundreds of living dead. Chapter 512. Hundreds of powerful zombies blocked the path, each of them emitting a sinister yet powerful aura. Murong couldn't help but tighten his grip on the royal weapon. At this moment, Murong actually felt a trace of nervousness. Murong wouldn't be nervous even if he was facing immortal kings or immortal high, immortal realm experts. However, he was nervous when facing these zombies. If he wanted to pass through this path, he had to lure these zombies away or kill all of them. However, it was impossible to kill all of them. Therefore, what Murong needed to do was to think of a way to lure the zombies away. Step by step, Murong gradually approached the zombies. The closer he got, the more nervous Murong became. Even the palms of his hands holding the royal weapon were sweating. The closer he got, the stronger the pressure on Murong became. It seemed that with every step he took, the pressure would explosively increase by several times. The sinister aura swept over like a torrent, suppressing everything. Murong was so nervous that cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Bang! Murong took another step forward. As soon as he took this step, an extremely strong aura of danger appeared in his heart. At this moment, cold sweat broke out on his back, and all the hairs on his body stood on end. Swish! Almost at the same time, the hundreds of zombies standing on the path in front of him seemed to have come alive. An aura 10 times, or even 100 times stronger than before suddenly emanated from their bodies. Huh! Chaotic shouts rang out from the mouths of the living dead. At the same time, Murong was shocked to see the zombies move. To be more precise, it wasn't them who moved. Rather, it was the several hundred undead simultaneously attacking Murong's side. Whether it was a palm strike, a punch, a finger strike, or a slash with a divine weapon. Although the methods of attack were different, their target was the same, Murong. In an instant, Murong felt that he was locked on by hundreds of experts. His hair stood on end. Without thinking, illusory wings of light suddenly appeared on Murong's back. The illusory wings flapped violently. With a swish, Murong turned into a streak of black light and disappeared on the spot. At the moment when he disappeared, rumble, hundreds of incomparably terrifying forces bombarded the ground where he had been standing at almost the same time. An incomparably terrifying power erupted, and the terrifying impact instantly tore the space into pieces. Even the ground was blasted into a huge crater. Bang! Even though Murong's reaction was extremely fast, and he immediately retreated. But he still couldn't completely avoid the attacks of the zombies' forces. After a muffled sound, success attacks, Hichu Luoshu's assess attack power. Hichu Luoshu was bombarded by a powerful and terrifying force, and a ball of resplendent yellow light burst out. Muronyu felt as though he had been struck by a divine mountain. His fleshly body, which was at the level of a grade 7 immortal artifact, was instantly wounded, and he coughed out a mouthful of blood. What a terrifying power! A trace of fear flashed through Muronyu's eyes. That was just the aftermath of the attack, and Hichu Luoshu had neutralized most of it. Even so, Muronyu was still injured. If not for Hichu Luoshu, Muronyu's body would have been torn apart. If Muronyu couldn't escape in time, even if there were 10 of him, he wouldn't be able to survive. Whoosh, whoosh, swish, Muronyu kept flapping his illusory light wings, retreating rapidly. Rumble, a terrifying aura that contained the power to destroy heaven and earth, constantly tore through the void and strangled towards him. Like a bright firework exploding in the void, it was extremely dazzling and at the same time fatal. After retreating for several li, the undead stopped attacking. Muronyu finally had time to stop and catch his breath. During this process, Muronyu noticed that although the undead were attacking him, they didn't seem to have left the main path. In fact, they didn't even move an inch. Could it be? A thought arose in Muronyu's mind, a conjecture. After staying in place for a while Muronyu recovered from his injuries and strength, he also paid attention to the movements of the undead. After the undead stopped attacking, Muronyu's feeling of being locked on disappeared, and the undead didn't seem to be chasing after him. This should be a safe distance. Only after coming into contact with the undead within a certain distance will they attack. Muronyu guessed. However, whether this was the truth or not, Muronyu didn't know. After recovering from his injuries, Muronyu cautiously approached the undead again. Just now, it was here that the undead began to attack as soon as I took a step forward. Then, if I'm not wrong, if I take another step, these undead will attack. Muronyu looked at the hundreds of undead in front of him with a grave expression. At this time, Muronyu even felt like he was being watched. As long as he dared to take a step forward, he would be greeted with an incomparably fierce attack from the undead. Clenching his teeth, Muronyu ultimately decided to step on it. Rumble. Just as he guessed, just as he took that step, the hundreds of undead in front of him moved again. A terrifying force shattered the sky and poured down on Muronyu in a frenzy, wanting to crush Muronyu into powder. Swish, swish, swish. Fortunately, Muronyu was prepared. The moment the undead attacked, Muronyu quickly retreated. This time, he was well prepared and wasn't injured by the undead's power. However, after verifying his guess, Muronyu was even more depressed. In order to verify whether the safe distance really existed, Muronyu continued to try a few more times. The result was the same every time. After taking that step, he would be attacked by the undead. This is so sad. How should I get past them? Muronyu stood in front of the hundreds of undead in the distance, looking at them, feeling a little frustrated. Fly over? If I enter the undead's attack range, I will definitely become their target. Muronyu thought in his heart. First, he couldn't fly over, and he couldn't charge over. If only I could directly teleport over. Muronyu suddenly had this thought in his mind, and then his eyes lit up. There was no formation on the other side that could teleport Hichu Luoshu. But there was no formation on the other side. He could make a teleportation formation on the other side. With a flip of his hand, a jade slip with a teleportation formation engraved on it appeared in Muronyu's hand. Then, Muronyu stretched out his finger, and the jade slip turned into a ray of light and flew directly towards the undead, wanting to pass through them. If the jade slip passed through, Muronyu might not have to face the undead and could go to the other side. However, the idea was bad, and the result was tragic. Just as the jade slip flew into the undead's attack range, one of the undead pointed his finger. With a bang, the jade slip was shattered and turned into powder. Muronyu was depressed. With a flip of his hand, 10 jade slips appeared in Muronyu's hand. Then, at the same time, Muronyu flicked the 10 jade slips in different directions. Bang, bang, bang. As expected, when the jade slips entered the undead's attack range, a few of the undead attacked and directly shattered them. They didn't even get a single step closer. Yu was so depressed that he was about to suffer an internal injury. "Watch my fairy scatterflowers," Yu shouted. With a flip of his hand, thousands of jade slips with formations engraved on them appeared in his hand. Then, with a wave of his hand, the thousands of jade slips shot towards the space behind the undead from different directions like stars in the sky. One jade slip wouldn't do, 10 wouldn't do either. But 1,000 should do, right? You would have succeeded as long as one of the jade strips managed to get past the undead and reach the back. He was gambling that the undead wouldn't shatter all of his jade slips. However, the reality was still cruel. Rumble, after the dazzling light, the hundreds of undead attacked at the same time and shattered the thousands of jade slips in an instant. You almost vomited blood. No, there seems to be one more that hasn't been shattered. You stared at the shattered jade slips without blinking. Not long ago, he thought that the thousands of jade slips had all been shattered. Later, he discovered that there was still one more jade slip that hadn't been shattered. However, Yu felt a chill run down his spine when he saw where the jade strip had landed. The jade slip fell to the ground right in the middle of the hundreds of living dead. If Yu wanted to teleport, he would appear beside the undead. In that case, he would die without a doubt. If I appeared among the undead, I would definitely be killed by them. Grandma, this jade slip wasn't deliberately left behind by them, right? Yu thought in his heart. As soon as this idea appeared, Yu couldn't help but shiver. If that was the case, then these undead were really too cunning. It seems that this method won't work. Yu no longer tried, because he knew that even if he had more jade slips, it would be useless. Do I have to escape through the earth? If possible, I can give it a try. But Yu didn't cultivate any earth escape cultivation method. Hichu, do you have any earth escape cultivation method? Give me a good one that is easy to cultivate. Yu's figure flashed and entered the Hichu Luoshu world. However, he didn't meet with Zhao, Jiqing, and the others. Yes, there is. But don't you think that it would be easier for you to control the Hichu Luoshu and directly rush through the Hichu Luoshu? Hichu gave Yu an idea. Chapter 513. Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. He had almost forgotten about this problem. One had to know that even if Yu was in the Hichu Luoshu, he could still control the Hichu Luoshu to move forward. Back in the Demon Mountain, Yu had tried to enter the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo's world. Then, he controlled the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo to rush into the Demon Mountain's forbidden area. At that time, the Hichu Luoshu's speed was very fast, and it could enter and exit the forbidden area of the Demon Mountain as if it was nothing. Of course, that speed back then was not worth mentioning in the eyes of the current Yu. However, what Yu was interested in now was not controlling the Hichu Luoshu world speed in the Hichu Luoshu, but to be able to fly in the Hichu Luoshu. However, after Yu became stronger, he basically did not do such a thing again. Especially after the Hichu Luoshu could be teleported, because he did not need to do so. But now, the living dead were blocking the way. Apart from this method, Yu was really at his wit's end. Although those living dead are strong, they should not be able to discover the Hichu Luoshu in the form of a particle, as long as I am careful. Yu muttered, but did not immediately execute the plan. He was now worried that if this did not work, then how was he going to go over? Those hundreds of living dead were very strong, and there might be experts at the immortal monarch level among them. This level of expert perception was especially strong. Even if the Hichu Luoshu turned into an extremely small particle, they would still be able to discover it. It would be fine if they discovered the attack in advance. But if these living dead waited for the Hichu Luoshu to float in the middle of them before attacking, then it would be a tragedy. Once the Hichu Luoshu was controlled by the living dead, Yu was confident that the living dead would not be able to break through the Hichu Luoshu. However, even if they could not break through the Hichu Luoshu, Yu could not leave. If that was the case, Yu could only cultivate in the Hichu Luoshu and wait until he was strong enough to come out. After thinking for a while, Yu finally decided to give it a try. At this moment, the Hichu Luoshu had turned into an extremely small particle of dust. Even if an immortal king realm expert came, he might not be able to discover this speck of dust in the void. Carefully controlling the particle of dust, Yu took the final step to a safe distance. Previously, as long as Yu took this step, he would be attacked by the living dead. I hope these living dead are not so strong, Yu said in his heart, then controlled the Hichu Luoshu to take a step forward. At the same time, his mental power was raised to the peak. Once he discovered that the living dead attacked, he would not hesitate to teleport away. Whoosh! After the Hichu Luoshu took that step, even Yu, who was inside the Hichu Luoshu, felt that the hundreds of living dead seemed to be looking at him at the same time. A sinister aura passed through the Hitu and the Book of the Luo and directly affected his body, causing his hair to stand on end. At this moment, Yu almost wanted to teleport away with the Hichu Luoshu. However, the fluke in his heart prevented him from leaving immediately. The living dead did not attack him. Yu, who was inside the Hichu Luoshu, could not help but sigh in relief. However, his mental state was still tense. This was because he saw that although the living dead did not attack him, they were still looking at him. One by one, they seemed to be looking at him. In fact, Yu even saw a few of the expressionless faces of the living dead reveal a puzzled expression. What the hell? Yu cursed in his heart. These living dead had been dead for who knew how long. Their muscles, skin, and so on had long stiffened. Moreover, they only had instincts and did not have intelligence. How could they have such human-like expressions? Yu began to think that he was hallucinating. However, he soon discovered that it was not his imagination. Rather, the living dead really did have a puzzled expression on their faces. They couldn't have been revived, right? Yu's heart tightened. These living dead were already so powerful without intelligence. Once they really came back to life, they would be even more terrifying. It should be known that the living dead had copper skin and iron bones. Their defensive power was extremely shocking, much stronger than immortal weapons and the like. Yu controlled the Hichu Luoshu and carefully floated in place without moving. He really did not dare to move. At this moment, the living dead were still looking at him. If Hichu Luoshu moved, he was afraid that he would be attacked fiercely. Aren't these living dead's senses too abnormal? Yu was depressed. He was even confident that even a high immortal wouldn't be able to discover the Hitu and the Book of the Luo. However, these living dead were actually stronger than high immortals. Of course, this was in reference to their perception. As for whether they had reached the high immortal realm, Yu did not know. Half a day. Those living dead stared at Yu for half a day before finally retracting their gazes. It was probably because they did not discover him. Damn it, if I had enough power, I would definitely kill you all with a slap. Yu cursed in his heart. After another half a day, he once again controlled the Hichu Luoshu to advance. After advancing for about 1 li, Yu's heart suddenly tightened. Shwa, Yu's living dead gazes shot over again. This caused Yu to be shocked. He was afraid that he had been discovered. However, not long after, Yu discovered that this was just a false alarm. A few gazes swept across the space where Hichu Luoshu was. After scanning a few times and not discovering anything, they retracted their gazes. Yu was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. After pausing for half a day, he continued to advance. Hichu Luoshu continued to advance at an extremely slow speed. It was not that Yu did not want to go faster, but that he really could not. This was because he discovered that every 1 li, those living dead would seem to discover something and look in Yu's direction. Every 1 li, Yu would stop for about a day, and the living dead's attack range was several tens of li. At this rate, Yu thought that it would take him several tens of days to reach the living dead. Several tens of li in several tens of days. This speed was comparable to a snail's. However, Moroni could only do so. Every 1 li, they would discover something. Is there such a pattern? Moroni floated in the air and muttered to himself. It was obvious that these living dead had discovered something. This was because every time Moroni walked a distance of 1 li, these living dead's gazes would focus on Hichu Luoshu and not on other places. Moroni was certain that these living dead had indeed discovered the existence of Hichu Luoshu. However, they could not see Hichu Luoshu. Otherwise, they would have attacked long ago. Time passed. In a flash, 2 months had passed. A total of 60 days had passed. I can't afford this. I finally arrived in front of the living dead. Moroni's face was full of tears. After a series of snail races, it took him 2 months to finally be able to see the undead up close. There was no aura on these living dead, only an extremely dense death aura. This death aura was even denser than the death aura in the air. It was like a thick black fog that wrapped around the living dead. It was very frightening. Moroni sized up the living dead in Hichu Luoshu. Swish! He was looking at the living dead that had an expression on his face earlier. It was a middle-aged man. However, Moroni had only been looking at him for a few breaths of time when the living dead seemed to have sensed something. With a swish, his eyes looked at Hichu Luoshu. At this moment, Moroni could even see the living dead's dry eyes without pupils. A gloomy chill shot out from his eyes, as if tearing through Hichu Luoshu and directly meeting Moroni's eyes. Moroni was shocked and immediately closed his eyes. Soon after, the eerie gaze of being watched disappeared. Almost immediately after Moroni closed his eyes, the middle-aged living dead's gaze swept through the void around Hichu Luoshu, but he did not discover anything. Moroni did not see anything. After the living dead did not discover anything, his face revealed a human-like expression of doubt. Was this really a living dead that had been dead for who knows how long? What a terrifying living dead. After a long time, Moroni finally opened his eyes, a look of horror flashing through his eyes. While he was horrified, Moroni did not dare to continue looking at these living dead. Moroni had a feeling that if he hadn't closed his eyes earlier, the undead would have been discovered if he had been just a split second slower. These living dead are too strange. It's better to get away from them as soon as possible. Moroni was still somewhat frightened. Originally, he thought that if he came to these living dead, he could directly take them into the Hichu Luoshu world. After all, he also had some living dead in Hichu Luoshu. However, the strength of the undead collected in the extreme celestial realm was too low, and they were of no use to Moroni. However, if he could take in these hundreds of powerful living dead, if he encountered any enemies in the future, as long as he released these living dead, even if the opponent was an immortal monarch, Moroni was confident that he could catch the opponent off guard. If he was lucky, he could even kill the opponent. However, Moroni did not dare to do so now. Who knew if there was an immortal emperor-level existence among these living dead? Whether he could take them into the Hichu Luoshu was still a problem. Even if he could take them into the Hichu Luoshu, Moroni's current ability could not suppress them. Chapter 514. Who? Inside the Hichu Luoshu, Moroni let out a deep breath. Finally, it was over. After a full 5 months, Moroni finally passed through the path blocked by the undead. It took Moroni almost half a year to cover the distance of more than 100 miles. This speed was comparable to a snail's. Furthermore, the thing that depressed Moroni the most wasn't his snail-like speed, but his state of mind. During these 5 months, Moroni's mind was always tense, and he did not dare to relax in the slightest. In these few months, Moroni could be said to be on high alert. If it were not for his strength, ordinary people would have already collapsed. Of the 2 months he had spent, 1 month was spent on the journey through the undead forest. Hundreds of undead, even if they stood separately, were only a few hundred meters apart. It took Moroni a full month to cross a few hundred meters, because There, almost any movement would be detected by the undead, and Murong-Yu had no choice but to slow down. However, that was all in the past, and Murong-Yu had safely passed through this part of the journey. However, Murong-Yu did not immediately come out of the Hichu Luo Shu, but continued to control the Hichu Luo Shu to move forward for a distance. After knowing that the undead could no longer be seen, Murong-Yu came out of the Hichu Luo Shu alone. Ooh, those undead did not respond. They must have stopped others from passing through at that intersection. Standing outside for a long time, Murong-Yu did not find any movement from the undead, and only then did he confirm that this place was safe. Then, he let out Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing. After Murong-Yu covered the two girls with a layer of life force, Zhao Jiqing said faintly, "The environment here is much better than the other side. The death chi is not so dense." After being reminded by Zhao Jiqing, Murong-Yu realized that the death chi here was indeed not so dense. Even his spirit sense was not suppressed as much, and could extend to a distance of 200 miles. This might be a good thing. Those undead did not chase after us. Could it be that their mission is only to guard that intersection? Could it be that there is something different here? This was an incomparably huge underground palace, and there were all kinds of buildings, palaces, and houses. On the way here, Murong-Yu and the other two entered some palaces and searched the houses, but did not find anything, not even a speck of dust. There are actually undead blocking the way in front. Could there be some treasure here? Murong-Yu's heart was excited, and his eyes blazing. One must know that this was a big sect in ancient times, if there really was a treasure. Let's go treasure hunting. Murong-Yu laughed and led the way. Sister Jiqing, did the big gangster break down because of the things that happened in the past few months? Yu Mengqing whispered to Zhao Jiqing, but when Murong-Yu heard this, he staggered. The treasure area? After the three walked for half a day, there was suddenly an intersection in front of them. Next to the intersection, there was a huge rock standing there. On the huge rock, 3 words were written in bold calligraphy: treasure area. This, Murong-Yu was a little surprised. Could this road really lead to the treasure area? Murong-Yu did not immediately walk over, but turned to look at Zhao Jiqing and asked, "Jiqing, the existence that summoned you is in that direction?" "It's not in the treasure area," Zhao Jiqing said without hesitation, because at this time, the feeling of being summoned was getting stronger and stronger. "Then let's go to the treasure area first. Maybe there really are treasures inside," Murong-Yu asked in a negotiating tone. Zhao Jiqing nodded slightly, and Yu Mengqing had no objections. So, the three walked into the treasure area. Not long after, a palace appeared in front of the two of them. Armory, pill storage, material storage, rare treasure storage. There were a total of more than a dozen palaces in front of them. Each of the palaces had a plaque that stated what was stored inside. Shocking. Seeing these palaces, Murong-Yu and the other two were absolutely shocked. Maybe there's nothing inside. It's so clean that there's not even a speck of dust. Yu Mengqing suddenly said. Murong-Yu glared at Yu Mengqing and said, "Whether there's anything inside or not, we'll know. But just in case, don't go in first, I'll go in first." Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing nodded and stayed in place. Murong-Yu took out the Hichu Luo Shu and the Yin-Yang cauldron and kicked open the door of the armory with the king weapon in his hand. Rumble, just as the door was kicked open by Murong-Yu, a vast aura as vast as the ocean fiercely burst out. Before Murong-Yu could react, it fiercely bombarded his body. Murong-Yu seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. His whole body seemed to have been ruthlessly hit by a meteorite from outer space, and his whole body was immediately sent flying. With a pu sound, a mouthful of blood was spat out by him. "Murong, big hoodlum!" Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing cried out in alarm, and hurriedly rushed toward Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu climbed up from the ground in a somewhat sorry state, and said in a deep voice, "I'm fine." Indeed, although the aura just now was terrifying, most of it had been offset by the Hichu Luo Shu. Although part of the power caused a certain amount of damage to Murong-Yu's physical body. But after Morong Yu spat out a mouthful of blood, the extravasated blood in his body dispersed, and at the same time, with the recovery of the life force, he quickly recovered. What's going on? Is there someone inside? At this time, there was still a terrifying aura constantly emitting from the palace, like a tide sweeping over wave after wave. Morong Yu gloomily looked at the palace door that he kicked open. After a long time, he suddenly laughed. Maybe we've really hit the jackpot this time. Zhao Jiqing rolled her eyes at Morong Yu. You're injured, and we don't know what's in the palace, and you're still saying that. That's right. Do you want to die? Yu Mengxing also rolled her eyes at Morong Yu. If I'm not wrong, there's no one in the palace. Morong Yu smiled slightly, as if he had guessed something. No one. Could it be some kind of formation or restriction? Zhao Jiqing glanced at the palace, but she really could not tell what was inside. Morong Yu shook his head. There should be a large number of divine weapons and magic treasures inside. This enormous power is the pressure emitted by those weapons. Pressure from weapons? Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengxing frowned slightly. They had seen royal weapons and even sovereign weapons before. However, when these royal weapons and sovereign weapons were not activated, they still emitted a faint pressure, but the pressure was not strong. Of course, if it was an emperor weapon, the pressure would be more terrifying. But there was no emperor weapon in the palace. If there was an emperor weapon, Morong Yu would not have just been sent flying and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, if there was no emperor weapons pressure in the palace, why would there be such a terrifying pressure? If that's the case, there must be a large number of weapons in this armory, and there's no lack of royal weapons and sovereign weapons. Yu Mengxing suddenly said with a shocked expression. Zhao Jiqing's face was also full of shock. We'll have to go in and take a look to see if that's the case. But you should enter the spatial treasure first. As he spoke, Morong Yu did not wait for the two girls to protest and directly put them into the Hichu Luo Shu. If the entire armory is filled with weapons, Morong Yu slowly walked into the palace with a burning gaze. At the same time, he brought out the Hichu Luo Shu. It floated in the void above his head, and rays of earthy yellow light fell down to envelop him. At the same time, Morong Yu brought out the yin-yang cauldron, and rays of yin-yang fire covered his entire body. With such a lineup, even a mortal high immortal expert wouldn't be able to kill Morong Yu in one strike. Rumble. As Morong Yu approached the entrance of the palace, waves of terrifying auras rushed out from within. However, these auras could not penetrate the barrier formed by the yin-yang fire. The moment they came into contact with the yin-yang fire, they were burned to ashes. With the yin-yang fire resisting the pressure, Morong Yu quickly walked into the palace. The palace was not big, only about 100 miles in radius. Palaces like this could be found everywhere in the immortal realm. There was nothing special about it. However, what shocked and excited Morong Yu was the entire palace was filled with weapons. All kinds of weapons and magic treasures were casually thrown around the palace. It was like a sea of weapons and magic treasures. Each of the weapons emitted a faint pressure, and the pressure eventually condensed into a terrifying aura like a vast ocean. It was this aura that sent Morong Yu flying. A sea of weapons and magic treasures. At a glance, there were at least millions of weapons and magic treasures. Morong Yu's eyes were burning with excitement. Hichu, take them. Hurry up and take them all. Morong Yu shouted excitedly. The reason for that was because he discovered that the grades of those weapons and treasures were not low. As he looked around, royal armaments could be seen everywhere. Swish, the Hichu Luo Shu enlarged. Then, a suction force was released from the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo, acting on the entire palace. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Weapons and magic treasures rushed into the Hichu Luo Shu like raindrops under the effect of the suction. In less than half a day, the entire palace and millions of divine weapons and magic treasures were all sucked into the Hichu Luo Shu. Not a single one was left. Chapter 515. In the Hichu Luo Shu world. Not long after Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing entered this place, they saw divine weapons and magic treasures falling from the sky like rain. Not long after, a huge mountain appeared in the open space in front of them. It was a huge mountain formed by weapons and magic treasures. Waves of powerful auras continuously spread out, even alarming the others in the Hichu, Luoshu world. So many weapons, so many magic treasures. Not long after, Little Purple and the others who were alarmed by the sky, full of divine weapons and magic treasures, were all stunned by the rain-like divine weapons and magic treasures. What's going on? Where did the Lord get so many magic treasures? The fire-eyed golden ape looked at the divine weapons and magic treasures piled up into a huge mountain in front of him with a shocked expression. Woof! Murong, you must have found a treasure trove. There are so many divine weapons and magic treasures, but it's a pity that he's not an immortal. Otherwise, I would have eaten my fill. The large black dog first praised, then had a look of pity. In principle, the heavenly dog race could devour any life or item with power to increase their strength. However, the heavenly dog did not devour everything. For example, these divine weapons and magic treasures, especially some royal weapons or monarch weapons. The power they contained was also very large. After devouring them, the large black dog's power could also increase. However, these divine weapons and magic treasures were not easy to digest. If he devoured them, he would need a long time to refine these divine weapons or magic treasures. And after he refined them, the power he devoured was not even 1/10 of these divine weapons or magic treasures. He needed a large amount of time to refine them, but the power he obtained in the end was very little. This kind of thing was not beneficial to the large black dog at all. It could even be said that it was a waste of time. Therefore, he would definitely not devour these divine weapons. Eat, eat, you only know how to eat. The fire-eyed golden ape glared at the large black dog and said unhappily, Woof, golden-haired ape, do you want to fight? However, you're not my match now. I don't want to fight with you. The large black dog looked at the fire-eyed golden ape with disdain. That disdainful look made the fire-eyed golden ape have the urge to beat him up. At this time, the big black dog had already reached the golden immortal realm. On the other hand, the fire-eyed golden ape had ascended to the immortal world too late. Even though he had obtained the inheritance of the heavenly demon god, his current strength had only reached the profound immortal realm. There was a gap of 2 whole cultivation levels between him and the large black dog. If they were to fight, the fire-eyed golden ape would definitely be the one being abused. Apes don't fight with dogs. I'm going to cultivate. The fiery-eyed golden ape looked at the large black dog disdainfully and turned to leave. Woof! Golden-haired gorilla, what did you say? Am I a dog? I'm Tengu. How could it be an ordinary dog? Stop right there with me. See if I don't give you a good thrashing today. The large black dog barked furiously and chased after the fire-eyed golden ape. Xiao Hei, don't be rash. You guys often fight. If Big Brother finds out, he'll be unhappy. If Big Brother blames me, I won't help you. Little Purple, who was riding on the big black dog's back, patted the big black dog's head and said with a smile, Woof, my great aunt, can you not call me Little Black? The large black dog was still arrogant just now, his battle intent soaring to the skies. However, when he heard Little Purple's words, he deflated. The large black dog wasn't afraid that Murong Yu would be unhappy. In reality, when had he not fought with the fire-eyed golden ape before? It was just that at that time, their strength was on par, and neither could do anything to the other. Now, his strength was much higher than the fire-eyed golden ape's. Fighting with the fire-eyed golden ape was bullying him, and there was no meaning in it. What made him deflated was that Little Purple called his name Little Black. Murong Yu called the large black dog Old Black. This name already made the large black dog's balls hurt. And Little Purple, this little thing, called him an old monster who had lived for who knew how many years, Little Black. Every time Little Purple called him that, he would feel his balls hurt. Little Black? What's wrong? Is this name not good? I'm called Little Purple. You're called Little Purple. That's pretty good. Be good. Don't be depressed. Little Purple stroked the large black dog's head and said words that made the large black dog's balls hurt. The large black dog looked up at the sky, tears streaming down his face. In less than half a day's time, the several million divine weapons and treasures in the entire palace had been swept clean by Murong-Yu. The entire palace was empty, and there wasn't even a speck of dust. Gone. Seeing that the entire palace had been emptied, Murong-Yu couldn't help but say, "Don't tell me you want to move this palace away too?" Yu Mingqing's voice came. At the same time, she and Zhao Jiqing both appeared in the palace. "I want to, but this palace is just an ordinary palace, and not a treasure," Murong-Yu said with a smile. Hearing that, Zhao Jiqing and Little Purple rolled their eyes at him. "You're too greedy," Yu Mingqing said unhappily. "Haha, it's just SOSO." While speaking, Murong-Yu turned and left the palace. "SOSO, the third in the world," Yu Mingqing muttered in her heart, and quickly followed. "You two stay here and don't come in." Before coming to the elixir warehouse, Murong-Yu said to Zhao Jiqing and Little Purple. The two women nodded. Then, Murong-Yu took out the Hichu Luoshu and the Yin-Yang cauldron and kicked the door of the elixir warehouse open. Murong-Yu was ready to be hit by the violent force in the palace. However, when the door was kicked open, it didn't erupt like the terrifying aura of the armory. An incomparably strong elixir fragrance spread from the palace, and it was refreshing to smell and even a feeling of floating. Murong-Yu's figure flickered, and he had already entered the elixir warehouse. Unlike the armory, the elixir warehouse was much smaller, and there were no mountain-like piles of elixirs. Only storage rings were thrown messily on the ground of the palace. However, the incomparably strong elixir fragrance proved to Murong-Yu that this was the elixir warehouse, and there were a large number of elixirs stored inside. Yes, elixirs can't be stored in the air like this. Those storage rings should have stored a large number of elixirs. Murong-Yu extended his divine thought and immediately found that there were at least tens of thousands of storage rings in the palace. Murong-Yu stretched out his hand to summon a storage ring, and his divine thought directly entered it. There was no restriction on the storage ring, so Murong-Yu's divine thought directly entered the space of the storage ring. Immediately, a smile appeared on Murong-Yu's face. Elixirs, countless elixirs. The entire space was densely packed with elixirs. At a cursory glance, there were at least trillions of elixirs, like there were grains of sand in the Ganges. Moreover, Murong-Yu also found that there was only one type of elixir in this storage ring. Presumably, the other storage rings only have one type of elixir in each storage ring. That means there are at least 10,000 types of elixir stored in this elixir warehouse. Murong-Yu's heart stirred, and he grabbed a few more storage rings and probed them with his divine thought. Just as he had guessed, these storage rings also stored a large number of elixirs of a single type. "Ha ha!" Murong-Yu laughed loudly, and with a wave of his hand, he immediately put the 10,000 storage rings into the Hichu Luoshu. Then, Murong-Yu carefully checked the palace, and after confirming that he did not miss a single storage ring, he left the elixir warehouse complacently. "Big hooligan, look at that lewd smile of yours. You must have gained a lot this time." As soon as he came out, Yu Mingqing asked. The smile on Murong-Yu's face suddenly froze, and he glared fiercely at Yu Mingqing. "Is my smile very lewd? It's obviously a pure smile." "Pure? Your smile is obviously lewd, and you're a big hooligan." Yu Mingqing curled her lips and said disdainfully. Murong-Yu glared fiercely at Yu Mingqing. "How am I lewd? How am I a hooligan? Could it be that I played hooligan with you before?" Yu Mingqing couldn't help but blush, and she couldn't help but think of the day when Murong-Yu dragged her into the Hichu Luoshu. Murong-Yu's demonic hand had once grabbed her breasts. Besides, if I wanted to play hooligan, I would only look for Jiqing. Right, Jiqing? Murong-Yu turned to look at Zhao Jiqing, who was snickering at the side. Zhao Jiqing's face was slightly red, and she rolled her eyes at Murong-Yu. "You guys can bicker, don't burn me." Sister Jiqing, let's ignore him. If we stay with him for too long, I'm afraid we won't be pure anymore." Yu Mengqing hugged Zhao Jiqing's hand and walked away, leaving behind a gloomy Murong-Yu. All right, you two, I'll go alone. I can't beat you. Murong-Yu followed, and soon they arrived at the material warehouse. Material warehouse, rare treasure warehouse, medicine warehouse. After walking down a dozen palaces, Murong-Yu was grinning from ear to ear. There was only one word to describe Murong-Yu's expression at this moment. Grinning from ear to ear. Smile, smile. Be careful not to laugh until your teeth fall out. Yu Mengqing glanced at Murong-Yu and said, "He's too smug." Zhao Jiqing covered her mouth and snickered. Not to mention teeth. Even if my head falls out, I can still regrow it. Murong-Yu laughed. Today's harvest was great, so he didn't care too much about Yu Mengqing. There's only one immortal vein warehouse left. Murong-Yu and the other two walked to the front of the last palace. This was the immortal vein warehouse. As the name suggested, there must be a large number of immortal veins stored inside. According to my experience, there must be some immortal veins that will surprise us. Are the two of you ready? Murong-Yu asked the two girls with a smile on his face. Open the door. Yu Mengqing rolled her eyes at Murong-Yu. Be careful. Murong-Yu kicked open the door to the immortal vein storehouse. Immediately, an aura that was countless times more vast than the ocean spread out. This was the purest energy of the immortal vein. Divine vein, chaos spiritual vein. At this moment, Hichu, who had been in Hichu Luoshu, exclaimed in Murong-Yu's mind. Chapter 516. Divine vein, chaos spiritual vein. Hichu's shocked voice rang in Murong-Yu's mind. Murong-Yu and the other two were also shocked by the vast spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The entire hall was filled with pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Like the stars in the sky, it was so vast and endless. Even the death aura lingering in the underground palace was unable to enter the palace due to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Why was it said that the palace was filled with pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and not immortal spiritual energy? This was because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that came out of the palace not only contained immortal spiritual energy, but also pure and higher grade spiritual energy of heaven and earth. There was even chaotic energy. Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing were stunned. After a long time, they said with a shocked expression, "What a rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth. If we cultivate here, our cultivation will definitely improve by leaps and bounds." At this moment, they seemed to be in an extremely rich and pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Even if they did not deliberately use their cultivation techniques, the surging spiritual energy of heaven and earth would automatically enter their bodies through every pore on their bodies. Then it would merge with the power in their bodies and be refined into their power. Just standing here had such an effect. If they cultivated here, their cultivation would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Leaps and bounds were just a conservative way of saying it. Of course, this did not include the situation where they encountered a bottleneck. Once they encountered a bottleneck, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth would not be able to help them solve that situation. At this moment, Murong-Yu woke up from his shock and quickly asked Hichu, "Hichu, is there a divine vein inside?" He clearly heard Hichu's excited voice just now. In this world, there were many kinds of spiritual veins. Among them, the lowest level was the spiritual veins in the cultivation world. Then there were the immortal veins in the immortal world. As the name implied, the divine vein was a spiritual vein that only appeared in the heaven realm. The difference between the divine vein and the immortal vein was like the difference between the immortal vein and the ordinary spiritual vein. In fact, the difference between them was even greater. However, just like how the immortal vein could only be formed in the immortal world, the divine veins could only be found in the heaven realm. Whether it was immortal veins or divine veins, the reason why they were formed was because there was enough heaven and earth spirit chi, as well as countless years of condensation. In the immortal world, there was no such high-grade heaven and earth spiritual chi. Murong, you sense the aura of chaos spiritual veins in this palace. He also sensed that it was purer and more advanced than ordinary immortal veins. However, he was only a high-grade immortal meridian. There must be a divine vein in the palace. I can feel the aura of divine veins, and it seems that there are quite a few of them. Hichu had already calmed down, and he spoke to Murongyu in a deep voice. Divine veins, even the lowest grade of divine veins, contained hundreds of millions of times more energy than a grade 9 immortal vein. It was worth billions of times more than a grade 9 immortal vein. If he had a divine vein, it would be equivalent to billions of 9th grade immortal veins. This was the difference between a divine vein and an immortal vein. Hearing Hichu's words and thinking about the difference in value between the two types of immortal veins, Murongyu, who had already calmed down, couldn't help but become excited again. He even had a feeling that the value of the divine vein in this palace was even higher than the value of all the things he had obtained before. However, whether this was true or not, he would only know after seeing it. Big gangster, are we going in? Yu Mengqing suppressed her excitement and looked at Murongyu and Zhao Jiqing. Of course we are going in. Murongyu nodded and strode in first. Like the other palaces, the entire palace had some array formations and restrictions to prevent the leakage of spirit qi from all kinds of spirit veins. Just like the armory, when Murongyu entered the spirit vein warehouse, he saw a sea of immortal veins of various grades that had been compressed to the size of a pinky finger. The palace was hundreds of miles wide. The entire palace was filled with spirit veins that had been compressed to the size of a pinky finger. When these spirit veins gathered together, they formed a vast ocean, an ocean of immortal veins. Among these spirit veins, the lowest grade was a grade 1 spirit vein. The highest grade was the chaos spirit vein and divine vein that Hichu had mentioned. So many spirit veins. Sister Jiqing, so many immortal veins. Yu Mengqing exclaimed excitedly when she saw the vast ocean of immortal veins in front of her. Zhao Jiqing's heart was also filled with shock as she looked at the palace, speechless for a long time. As for Murongyu, his eyes had already swept across the countless immortal veins and finally landed on more than 100 spirit veins that were as thick as an arm. Chaos spirit vein, divine vein. Among them, there were 10 chaos spirit veins that emitted an extremely vast aura of chaos energy. Apart from these 10 chaos spirit veins, the remaining 100 were all divine veins. More than 100 divine veins. Each divine vein was equivalent to hundreds of millions of grade 9 immortal veins. These 100 mortal veins were equivalent to hundreds of millions of grade 9 immortal veins. In fact, hundreds of millions was just a general number. If the difference between a divine vein and an immortal vein was expressed in a specific number, then a grade 1 divine vein was equivalent to 1 trillion grade 9 immortal veins. 1 trillion was equivalent to 1 trillion. In other words, 1 trillion grade 9 immortal veins were equivalent to 1 grade 1 divine vein. In the spirit vein warehouse, there were more than 100 divine veins. Even if they were only grade 1 divine veins, they were worth at least 100 trillion grade 9 immortal veins. Of course, apart from these 100 divine veins, there were countless other divine veins of various grades. If all of them were to be converted to grade 9 immortal veins, it would be no less than a few hundred trillion. Chaos spirit veins, divine veins, and ordinary immortal veins meant that there were at least 1,000 trillion grade 9 immortal veins in this palace. 1,000 trillion grade 9 immortal veins was equivalent to 1 trillion grade 9 immortal veins. Only the super forces would be able to possess such a large number of immortal veins. Of course, Murongyu did not know how much wealth those super forces had. He did not have time to think about that. Now, he only had one thought, and that was to strike it rich. Even if they only obtained treasures and spiritual veins from this trip to the underground palace, Murongyu, Chaos Shenzhen, and Celestial Palace would definitely rise to the ranks of super forces. Of course, this was only referring to their financial resources. Shenzhen and Celestial Palace still had a long way to go before they could truly become super forces. Hichu put all these immortal veins, divine veins, and chaos spirit veins into the Hichu Luo Shu. Hurry up. After recovering from his shock, Murong Yu began to collect the immortal veins and divine veins. After all, the He Tu and the Luo tomes were the only things that belonged to him. Otherwise, if an accident were to happen and someone were to suddenly come and snatch away the immortal veins, Murong Yu's heart would ache to death. The He Tu and the Book of the Luo opened up and shrouded the entire palace. A huge suction force was emitted continuously, sucking the immortal veins and divine veins into the He Tu and the Book of the Luo. In less than half a day, the entire spiritual vein warehouse was empty. Only the pure spiritual chi of heaven and earth had not dissipated into the air. Finally, it's all in. Murong Yu breathed a sigh of relief. Sister Jiqing, look at the big hooligan. He's becoming more and more like a miser. Yu Mengqing held on to Zhao Jiqing's arm and curled her lips at Murong Yu. Zhao Jiqing did not say anything and only smiled slightly. Murong Yu only glared at Yu Mengqing and said, "In that case, you won't get a share of these treasures and spiritual veins." "Why should I? I also found something." Yu Mengqing glared at Murong Yu. "Didn't you say that I'm a miser?" "Since these things are already in my pocket, I naturally won't take them out." Murong Yu laughed. "Umph, big hooligan. Forget it if you don't want to give it to me." Yu Mengqing turned her head and did not even look at Murong Yu. "Girl, you're actually so generous?" Murong Yu was a little surprised. Although they had a good relationship, and Yu Mengqing was now considered a part of Shenzhen, she did not have a reason to be so generous, right? These are things worth thousands of grade 9 spiritual veins. Was she really not tempted? If you don't want it, then don't. I don't care. When the time comes, I'll just follow Sister Jiqing. Yu Mengqing said with a sweet smile. Murong Yu rolled his eyes. He really thought that Yu Mengqing did not need it. This time, Zhao Jiqing would definitely get a lot of treasures and spiritual veins. As long as Yu Mengqing followed Zhao Jiqing, she would not have to worry about not having these things. Moreover, they all knew that Murong Yu was not really a miser. He was still very generous to his own people. "All right, you guys bicker every day. Don't you feel tired? Now, do you want to go to the other side, or do you want to count these things first?" Zhao Jiqing quickly interrupted the bickering between the two. "There are too many things in the dozens of treasure vaults. It's hard to count them all in such a short time. How about this? We'll go to the other side first. Anyway, I've already taken all of these. It won't be too late to count them after we leave the underground palace." Murong Yu pondered for a moment before finally saying. Although they all wanted to know how much they had gained, they knew that now was not the time. Thus, the three of them left the treasure area and walked to the other side. "Big gangster, how much did we gain this time?" Yu Mengqing could not help but ask along the way. Zhao Jiqing also looked at Murong Yu. "If I'm not wrong, it's at least 2,000 trillion. Murong Yu thought for a moment before saying, 2,000 trillion grade 1 spiritual veins? Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing were both stunned. "You're wrong. I'm not talking about grade 1 spiritual veins, but grade 9 spiritual veins. This time, we've gained at least 2,000 trillion grade 9 spiritual veins." Murong Yu said excitedly. "Ah!" Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing instantly felt a little dizzy. Chapter 517. There were at least 2 trillion 9th grade immortal meridians, and more than that. Most importantly, these were 9th grade immortal meridians, not 1st grade immortal meridians. What kind of concept was this? Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing felt a little dizzy. This huge amount of wealth shocked them. "Sister Jiqing, let me help you. I feel like I can't stand properly." Yu Mengqing hugged Zhao Jiqing's arm tightly and said in shock. Zhao Jiqing nodded. She was also shocked. "Look at you guys. Just this, and you're already making such a fuss. If there were more, wouldn't you be scared to death?" Murong Yu pretended to be calm and said, "Murong, stop pretending. You're also very surprised and excited right now, aren't you? Zhao Jiqing looked at Murong Yu's calm and thought it was funny. Ha ha! Murong Yu suddenly laughed out loud. He couldn't hold back the excitement in his heart. You really make me despise you. Yu Mengqing had calmed down and looked at Murong Yu with disdain. At the same time, she said to Zhao Jiqing, Sister Jiqing, let's stay away from this guy. He's like a madman. If others see him, they'll think that we know each other. As she said that, Yu Mengqing pulled Zhao Jiqing away from Murong Yu. After laughing wildly for a while, Murong Yu finally stopped. After regaining his composure, he glared at Yu Mengqing and strode toward the fork in the road. Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing hurriedly followed. After arriving at the fork in the road, Murong Yu and the other two continued to move forward. Not long after, another fork in the road appeared in front of them. Cultivation area, Jiqing, is it this way? Murong Yu stopped and looked at Zhao Jiqing. Zhao Jiqing nodded and pointed straight ahead. The summoning feeling in her heart was getting stronger and stronger, but it was not in the cultivation area. If that's the case, then let's move on. Murong Yu had no intention of entering the cultivation area. Yu Mengqing couldn't help but feel strange. Aren't we going to take a look at the cultivation area? Maybe there are a lot of treasures there. Murong Yu shook his head and said, as the name suggests, the cultivation area is just a place for cultivation in this underground palace. There shouldn't be any treasures there. All the treasures in the underground palace are in the treasure area. Yes, they are with us now. Even if there are a few treasures in the cultivation area, we still have important matters to attend to. A trace of disdain appeared on Yu Mengqing's face as she looked at Murong Yu. Are you looking down on him? Murong Yu smiled faintly. He didn't have such thoughts. After all, he had already looted the entire treasure area. What other treasures were there? Moreover, as he had said, the priority now was to settle Zhao Jiqing's matter. After all, it wasn't just the three of them who entered the Dead Sea. Although they didn't know where those people were teleported to, it was hard to guarantee that there wouldn't be more people entering the underground palace. As they spoke, they didn't stop. Soon, they passed by another fork in the road. In front of them was written, Living Area, Treasure Area, Cultivation Area, Living Area. This huge underground palace was divided into different areas. It didn't look like a sect, but more like a school. Sister Jiqing, do you feel it? We've already walked a long distance. Yu Mengqing asked. Zhao Jiqing nodded. I have a feeling that we're almost there. At this time, Zhao Jiqing felt the summoning in her heart getting stronger and stronger. It was as if there was someone in front of her calling her. Even if you tried to suppress it, she couldn't suppress the summoning that seemed to want to jump out. It's just in front. Zhao Jiqing suddenly pointed at a palace in front of them and said, I feel that the thing that's calling me is in that palace. This was an incomparably huge palace. From the outside, the palaces that Murong Yu had passed by looked similar to ordinary palaces. The tallest one was only a few dozen meters tall. Of course, the inside of those palaces was another space. The space inside the space was different from what it looked like from the outside. From afar, this palace was at least 100 miles tall. It was hundreds of miles long. It was extremely majestic. The most shocking thing was that the surface of the palace was covered in a layer of red flames. The flames were burning. The entire palace seemed to be burning. However, Murong Yu and the other two knew that the palace wasn't burning. Although the flames looked like they were burning the palace, in fact, the flames were coming from within the palace. From afar, an extremely powerful but somewhat weak aura came from the ancient times. It was vast and suppressive. What's that? Yu Mengqing suddenly looked at the palace and exclaimed. Murong Yu and Zhao Jiqing looked in the direction that Yu Mengqing was pointing at. They realized that there seemed to be a divine bird burning with divine fire soaring in the flames. The divine phoenix, Murong Yu exclaimed. The divine phoenix was a divine beast from ancient times. It was extremely powerful. It was said that it was one of the most powerful divine beasts in the world, just like the Dragon Clan. However, there are no longer any phoenixes in the world today. The Phoenix Clan had long become history. It was almost annihilated in the long river of history. It was only mentioned in some ancient books. That's a phoenix? Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing's faces flashed with shock. Although they had heard of phoenixes, they had never seen one before. Morongyu nodded. He wasn't sure if it was a phoenix, but Hichu was sure. After all, Hichu was too ancient. He must have seen these phoenixes before. The divine phoenix. What's that next to it? Is that a divine dragon? Yu Mengqing pointed to the side of the divine phoenix and asked. At this moment, the palace that was originally burning with red flames was now covered with a layer of black flames. These flames intertwined with the red flames, as if they were fighting with each other. Amidst the flames, a huge black dragon appeared beside the divine bird. At this moment, the two divine beasts were fighting. However, perhaps the scene above the palace was just an illusion or an image. No matter how fierce the battle between the two divine beasts was, Morongyu and the other two could feel some kind of energy fluctuation. The strangest thing was that Morongyu and the other two could feel that the aura from the mountain seemed to be gradually weakening. Jiqing, are you sure that the thing that summoned you is in this palace? Morongyu turned to look at Zhao Jiqing and asked with a serious expression. Zhao Jiqing nodded. The thing that summoned me seems to be asking me to go in. Morongyu frowned slightly. This palace actually manifested the divine phoenix and divine dragon. Then I think that this palace might be related to the Phoenix clan or the Dragon clan. It's very likely that the thing that summoned you is the Phoenix clan's powerhouse or the Dragon clan's powerhouse. Could there be the inheritance of the Dragon clan or the Phoenix clan inside? Yu Mengqing asked in horror. Morongyu nodded slightly. I have the same feeling. However, we still don't know what the truth is. Also, this palace gives me a bad feeling. I feel that something is going to happen. So, we must be very careful this time. Morongyu looked at the two girls with a serious expression and said. Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing nodded quickly. However, even so, my feeling could be wrong. There might be the inheritance of the Phoenix clan or the Dragon clan inside. As for whether we want to go in or not, it's up to you. I must go in, Zhao Jiqing said with a determined expression. The being that had summoned her had drawn her over from such a far distance. Regardless of whether there was an inheritance or something else, she had to face it head-on. Otherwise, if she came here but didn't go in, she would definitely regret it in the future. I'll go in too. Yu Mengqing also decided. Okay, then let's all go in. I want to see if there really is a Phoenix clan or Dragon clan senior in this palace. However, you must be careful. If you feel a suction force acting on you when you're in danger, I hope you won't resist. Morongyu said with a serious expression. The two girls nodded quickly. Then they each took out their royal weapons. Although they obtained a large number of divine weapons and magic treasures in the treasure area, they didn't have enough time to refine them. And these royal weapons were given to them by Morongyu long ago. They had already refined them. After covering the two girls with a layer of life force, Morongyu asked again, Are you ready? The two girls nodded. Then Morongyu took the lead and walked toward the palace. Not long after, Morongyu and the other two arrived in front of the palace's gate. Strangely enough, the raging flames had originally enveloped the entire palace. However, when Morongyu's group of three walked in, the flames automatically retracted back into the palace. The powerful aura also gradually weakened. We're going in. Morongyu came to the palace's gate and said in a deep voice. Then he viciously kicked the gate. Rumble. After a loud noise, the gate was directly kicked open by Morongyu. Then, the scene in the palace appeared in front of Morongyu and the other two. There was nothing. Morongyu swept his gaze over the palace and discovered that it was completely empty. There wasn't a single thing inside. He couldn't help but glance at Zhao Jiqing. Go in. Zhao Jiqing nodded slightly. Then Morongyu and the other two stepped into the palace. Rumble. Just as they entered the palace's gate automatically closed, giving Morongyu and the other two a fright. At the same time, a bad feeling appeared in their hearts. At the same time, a pink fog appeared in the palace out of thin air, enveloping Morongyu and the other two. Not good. Hold your breath. Don't let your body come into contact with the pink fog. Murong-Yu's expression changed abruptly as he shouted in a low voice. Chapter 518. The pink mist instantly drifted in the hall, and no one knew where it came from. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped Murong-Yu and the other two. When they saw the pink mist, before Murong-Yu could warn them, Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing already felt that something was amiss. They were on their guard. When Murong-Yu shouted, the three of them simultaneously opened their shields, wanting to stop the pink energy from entering. However, it was too late. Before Murong-Yu's voice had even died down, the pink mist had already penetrated their shields and Royal Armament's defensive shields. Even the Royal Armament's power was unable to stop the pink mist. Seeing this, Murong-Yu was shocked. At the same time, he roared, "Oh no!" At the same time, his power began to explode wildly, wanting to force the pink mist away. When he reacted, Murong-Yu muttered to Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing, "Don't let the mist touch your body." At the same time, Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing also began to unleash their power, wanting to avoid the pink mist. However, the pink mist was simply too strange. It could even penetrate the Royal Armament's power in an instant, let alone Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing's power. The two women's realms were not high, far inferior to Murong-Yu. Thus, when they unleashed their power, they were unable to stop the pink mist at all. In the blink of an eye, the pink mist had already penetrated their power and directly affected their bodies. Then, it entered their bodies through the 36,000 pores on their bodies. In that instant, every inch of Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing's skin began to show a seductive crimson color. A strange feeling immediately appeared in their hearts. After the pink mist entered their bodies, they involuntarily gave up on expelling the power and withdrew their power. They even withdrew their royal armaments. Surging life force continuously erupted from Murong-Yu's body, forming a shield around him, enveloping his entire body. The pink mist that could penetrate the royal armament's defenses actually stopped in front of the life force. Seeing this, Murong-Yu was immediately delighted. He knew that the strange pink mist would not invade his body. However, at that moment, he discovered that something was wrong. He turned around and saw that Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing had actually given up all resistance. Their bodies were completely enveloped by the pink mist. In fact, you could even see the abnormalities on the two women's bodies. At that moment, Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing's faces were flushed red. Their originally watery eyes were now looking seductively at Murong-Yu in front of them. In fact, Murong-Yu could even see a trace of desire in their eyes. Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing involuntarily moaned. Their voices were extremely seductive. Coupled with their seductive gazes and beautiful appearances, Murong-Yu almost lost himself in their charms. So hot. At that moment, Zhao Jiqing's face and skin were getting redder and redder. Waves of inexplicable power were constantly acting on her body and her soul, causing her to involuntarily develop some kind of desire. A strange feeling was constantly rising from her body. "Rip," Yu Mengqing moaned. She reached out and tore a piece of clothing in front of her chest. Damn it! Murong-Yu was shocked. He finally knew what the pink fog was. It was an aphrodisiac. Like an aphrodisiac, it could stimulate the lust in the depths of a person's heart and make them lose themselves. At that moment, Yu Mengqing's eyes were seductive. Her eyes were no longer clear. Instead, they were filled with passion and burning desire. So hot. Yu Mengqing moaned again. She only felt that her entire body was burning. She had a feeling that she wanted a vent. Rip. She tore a large piece of clothing from her body. At the same time, she rushed towards Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu's figure swayed, and he still came to Yu Mengqing's side. He reached out his hand and directly restrained Yu Mengqing's power. At the same time, she passed through the power of life, trying to force the pink energy out. However, although Yu Mengqing's power was restrained, the feeling of desire became even more intense. Her eyes were blurred as she looked at Murong-Yu with passion. A pair of small hands quickly grabbed Murong-Yu's body, trying to tear Murong-Yu's clothes apart. Damn it! Murong-Yu cursed and increased the speed of the transmission of the power of life. However, he realized that even though the power of life was like a flood, it could not restrain Yu Mengqing. As time passed, Yu Mengqing's body became hotter and hotter. Her actions became more and more intense. Rip! Finally, a piece of Murong-Yu's clothing was torn apart by Yu Mengqing. At the same time, Yu Mengqing hugged Murong-Yu's body with both hands. Her beautiful face quickly kissed Murong-Yu. Yu Mengqing, wake up! Murong-Yu was shocked and angry. Under such circumstances, he could no longer control himself. However, his rationality told him that he absolutely could not do such a thing. Now, Yu Mengqing was confused by the aphrodisiac. What would happen after this? How would he explain it to her and Zhao Jiqing? Therefore, he had to wake Yu Mengqing up to prevent her from making a huge mistake. Hichu, is there any way? Murong-Yu saw that the power of life was useless and could not help but ask Hichu anxiously. If there is a way, it is only possible to relieve their lust by relieving them of their desire. Otherwise, if too much time passes, their bodies will explode and they will die. This kind of thing, I need to see if there is any other way. Hichu frowned slightly. Although he was experienced and knowledgeable, he had never seen this kind of pink fog before. Those pills, quick, let me see if there are any antidotes. Murong-Yu shouted anxiously. At this time, Yu Mengqing was already confused. Although her power had been restricted, her body was getting hotter and hotter. Her eyes were blurred, and she was completely immersed in the flames of lust. It's so painful, I want. Yu Mengqing kept murmuring as her hands crazily hugged Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu was shocked and angry. Right at this moment, Murong-Yu suddenly felt a warm and fragrant body pressing against his back. At the same time, a pair of soft yet fiery lips kissed his back. He turned his head and saw that Zhao Jiqing was also confused by the flames of lust just like Yu Mengqing. Damn it! Which bastard is it? If I find out, I will definitely turn you into ashes. Murong-Yu was extremely angry, and his murderous intent soared to the sky. However, he also knew that now was not the time to be angry. He first had to solve the situation of the two women. Otherwise, Zhao Jiqing and the others might end up exploding and dying. Rip! Murong-Yu had just let go of Yu Mengqing's hand when Yu Mengqing had already torn all her clothes. Suddenly, the naked Yu Mengqing was completely naked in front of Murong-Yu. The soft and firm little white bunnies that were full of elasticity swayed in front of Yu Mengqing's chest, attracting Murong-Yu's eyes. The two protrusions that were like purple grapes made Murong-Yu salivate. Murong-Yu's eyes could not help but sweep down, past the flat lower abdomen, to the black forest, and then the two snow-white but tempting thighs. I want. Yu Mengqing moaned and threw herself into Murong-Yu's arms. What the hell is this situation? Murong-Yu could not help but roar. Facing such a stunning beauty who threw herself into his arms, Murong-Yu would be lying if he did not have any reaction. At this time, Murong-Yu's heart was also full of lust. However, his only trace of rationality told him that he could not lose himself in lust. Once he did, he would be doomed eternally. Hichu, is there any way? Murong-Yu roared to the sky and said loudly to Hichu. There is no way. Hichu was also somewhat helpless. At the same time, Zhao Jiqing, who was kissing Murong-Yu crazily behind, also tore her clothes fiercely. At this time, Murong-Yu was hugged by two stunning beauties and kept saying very seductively, I want. If it were other people, they would have already gotten on the horse and had a few thousand rounds with this kind of luck. Murong-Yu also had this idea in his heart, but his rationality told him that he could not do so. Hee kid, those two beauties of yours have been hit by my pink morning. If there is no man, their souls will soon be annihilated in lust. Don't think of any way to relieve their lust. If there is no yin and yang balance, the souls of those two beauties will be annihilated. Just as Murong-Yu was trying his best to resist the temptation and think of a way to solve it, A voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Who is it? Who the hell are you? Moroni could not help but roar. He hated the person who spoke to him. Who I am is not important. He kid. If you continue to be reserved, those two beauties of yours will not be able to hold on, and their souls will be annihilated. Don't blame me for not reminding you. The pink morning directly affects the soul. Chapter 519. There was no cure. It was an aphrodisiac that directly affected one's soul. Unless a man and a woman had intercourse, and yin and yang were in harmony, the person who was inflicted with the pink morning would definitely die. This drug called the pink morning was too overbearing. Not only did it directly affect one's soul, but there was no cure. Moroni was furious, and his killing intent soared. He hated the person who spoke to him to the extreme. Whoosh! With a thought, Moroni sent the two women into the Hichu Luo Shu world. He did not want anyone to see Zhao, Jiqing, and Yuqing's bodies. At the same time, Moroni's divine thought directly entered the two women's soul space. The two women's souls were almost the same. They were shaking violently, completely affected by the pink morning. Especially Yu Mengqing, because her strength was lower than Zhao, Jiqing's, she was more seriously affected. Seeing this, Moroni's heart sank. It seemed that the voice was right. There was no cure for an aphrodisiac that directly affected one's soul. Of course, there was only one way, and that was to have intercourse, and yin and yang were in harmony. Is this really the only way? Moroni was very unhappy. He did not want to have sex with the two women under such circumstances. Young man, if you want to save the two women, you have to have yin and yang with them. Black Dragon did not lie to you. This is the only way. While Moroni was deep in thought, a slightly tired female voice sounded in his mind. Who are you? Moroni's face was gloomy, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. I am Huafeng, a member of the Phoenix clan. I was the one who summoned that girl. However, I was too slow to react to the pink morning, and that despicable black dragon secretly took action. Huafeng's voice was tired and weak, as if she had no strength to speak. Huafeng, a member of the Phoenix clan? Did you summon Jiqing over? Moroni's heart trembled. His guess wasn't wrong. Moreover, Huafeng was not the only person in this palace. There was also Black Dragon. It was the despicable Black Dragon that Huafeng spoke of that had secretly taken action, causing Zhao, Jiqing, and Yu Mengqing to be poisoned by the pink morning. That bastard. As a senior, he's actually so despicable and shameless. Moroni gnashed his teeth inwardly, wishing he could slap He Long to death. Why did you summon Jiqing? Moroni's voice. Inheritance. Let her accept my inheritance, and this underground palace is my palace. Young man, your two women aren't going to last much longer. If you still don't take action, I'm afraid they'll lose their lives. After Huafeng said a few simple words, she urged Moroni and Zhao Jiqing to mediate. Damn you, Black Dragon. Sooner or later, I'll grind your bones to dust. Moroni roared in his heart as his figure flashed and entered the He-Tu and Luo Shu world. As soon as he appeared beside Zhao, Jiqing, and Yu Mengqing, the two naked women wrapped themselves around him. Their white bodies stimulated Moroni's eyes, and the lust in his heart quickly exploded. Jiqing, Mengqing, I'm sorry. Moroni growled. He could not hold back any longer, and he pounced on Yu Mengqing. Since this was the only way to get rid of the pink morning, Moroni did not want the two women to die. He had no choice but to get on the horse. Even if the two women blamed him afterwards, Moroni would accept it. After all, no matter what, their lives were the most important. Logically speaking, Moroni should have done it with Zhao Jiqing first. However, he pounced on Yu Mengqing directly. Did this mean that Moroni liked Yu Mengqing more? In reality, this was not the case. Whether it was Yu Mengqing or Moroni, who had slept with Moroni before, the two of them were far inferior to Zhao Jiqing in Moroni's heart. In Moroni's heart, Zhao Jiqing would always be the most important person. The reason why he pounced on Yu Mengqing was because Yu Mengqing's strength was lower. After being hit by the pink morning, the medicinal effects were more violent than Zhao Jiqing's. There was almost no foreplay. Murong almost immediately got on the horse. To Yu Mengqing, Murong, who had experienced it once, was obviously an expert. Yu Mengqing frowned slightly. However, under the effects of the pink morning, Yu Mengqing's actions were frantic, and she screamed crazily. During this process, Zhao Jiqing also pestered him and kept demanding. Murong did not enjoy it. Instead, he kept an eye on the two women. When he saw that Yu Mengqing's frenzy had subsided a little, he left Yu Mengqing and turned around to carry Zhao Jiqing. He immediately got on the horse. In an instant, the sound of the zither and the zither resonated. The entire space was filled with a lewd atmosphere. After one day and one night, the two women finally fell asleep with their screams. The effects of the pink morning also finally subsided. One day and one night, Murong wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Thinking back to the day and night of madness, he still felt a little helpless. If he was not different from ordinary people, he would not have been able to last for so long. If he could not make the two women come out, the effects of the pink morning would not be removed. After looking at the two women who had fallen asleep, Murong sat down cross-legged. After one day and one night of madness, Murong did not only feel pleasure, but he also felt his strength had improved a little. Rumble. Not long after, he finally broke through to the early stage of the overarching heavenly supreme celestial stage. After breaking through, Murong's strength continued to rise. Soon after, he broke through to the intermediate stage of the overarching heavenly supreme celestial stage. After an unknown period of time, Murong's strength finally stopped rising. His cultivation base had also stabilized at the late stage of the overarching heavenly supreme celestial stage. After one day and one night of madness, his strength had increased by one stage. He was now a late-stage, overarching heavenly supreme celestial. He was only one step away from becoming a great, overarching golden celestial. Only after becoming a great, overarching golden celestial could one be considered an expert in the celestial world. Murong could only look at this last step and sigh. In terms of cultivation base, there was still a gap between him and a true powerhouse. He could only be considered a minor powerhouse. While Murong was breaking through, the two girls who had been nourished by Murong were still in a deep sleep. However, their strength was slowly changing as well. Murong chuckled inwardly when he sensed the changes in his and the two women's strength. He thought to himself, "Is this the effect of dual cultivation?" Then he shook his head. He knew that the breakthrough in his strength this time was not entirely due to the effect of dual cultivation. It was due to the two women's primordial yin that he had obtained. If he allowed the three of them to continue their madness for another day and night, it would not have such an effect. The two women were still unconscious and had not woken up. Moreover, their strength was still rising. Murong looked at the two women. When he did not see anything unusual about them, he withdrew his divine sense. I'm a late-stage, overarching, heavenly supreme celestial. When I was a late-stage mystic celestial, I already had 2,200 dragons of energy. How much dragon energy do I have now? Murong's figure flashed and disappeared from where he stood, reappearing in another space between he two and Luo Shu. Rumble. As soon as Murong appeared, the silhouettes of coiling dragons appeared above his head. 1,000, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 4,500. It did not take long before 4,500 silhouettes of coiling dragons appeared above Murong's head. In other words, his strength had more than doubled. His true strength was now a nine heavens mystic celestial. An ordinary overarching heavenly supreme celestial would only have the strength of 1 to 1,000 coiling dragons. Even a great overarching golden celestial would only have between 1,000 to 3,000 coiling dragons. A nine heavens mystic celestial was considered an elite in the celestial realm. Their strength was second only to celestial kings. Their strength was between 3,000 to 6,000 coiling dragons. A nine heavens mystic celestial with 5,000 coiling dragons was considered an elite among nine heavens mystic celestials. Murongyu was an overarching heavenly supreme celestial, yet he had achieved 4,500 points of coiling dragon power. Although his cultivation base was not at the level of an expert in the celestial realm, his strength could be considered an ordinary expert in the celestial realm. He was even stronger than an ordinary nine heavens Xian celestial. 4,500 coiling dragons of energy. My strength has more than doubled. My life force has also increased. If I treat Brother Shangwan in my current state, I don't think I'll need half the time. Even if it's Guanjia, I can give it a try. Murongyu thought to himself. At this moment, the tree of life in his dantian had grown again. It had grown from 100,000 miles to 200,000 miles. Every second, the amount of chaotic energy absorbed from the void was several times more than before, or even 10 times more. My body has been strengthened again. After the heavenly tribulation, my body should be able to become a grade 8 celestial weapon. At this rate, my body should be as strong as a royal weapon by the time I become a nine heavens mystic celestial. Murongyu is quite satisfied with his breakthrough. In terms of strength, it's still passable. However, my lifespan has increased to 100 billion years. I guess I've lived a long life, right? Murongyu chuckled with a lewd smile on his face. An ordinary overarching heavenly supreme celestial only had a lifespan of 1 billion years. However, Murongyu's lifespan was 100 times longer than an ordinary overarching heavenly supreme celestial. He had the lifespan of a nine heavens mystic celestial. This was extremely terrifying. The longer Murongyu's lifespan, the greater his future achievements would be. After all, as long as one had a long lifespan, one's strength would increase. In the same realm, the longer Murongyu's lifespan, the more powerful he would be. Thus, he would have fewer misgivings when doing things. Chapter 520. Time passed by slowly. After a day and night of madness and indulgence, Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengxing finally woke up from their slumber, although they had indulged in madness for a day and a night. Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengxing were not ordinary people. Therefore, when they woke up, they regained their energy. Almost at the same time, the two women woke up at the same time. Then, they saw each other's naked, white flesh. Almost at the same time, the madness from before appeared in their minds. Although they were under the influence of the pink death and were confused by lust, it did not mean that they did not have any memory of it. It was just that when they were confused, their rationality was drowned out. They had a deep impression of that crazy day and night. At the same time, the two women's faces turned red, and Yu Mengxing exclaimed. Zhao Jiqing's face was also flushed red. For a day and a night of madness, it really made her a little embarrassed. Sister Jiqing, I'm sorry. Yu Mengxing conjured a set of clothes and walked over. She looked at Zhao Jiqing with a guilty expression and said, If I did not go into that hall, perhaps this would not have happened. Yu Mengxing felt very guilty, because she felt that she had let Zhao Jiqing down by doing such a ridiculous thing with Murongyu. After all, Zhao Jiqing and Murongyu had always been a couple. Now that she was the third party, she could be considered the third party. Even if she was not the third party, she still had sex with Murongyu. She had let Zhao Jiqing down. Zhao Jiqing's face was still a little red, but she looked straight at Yu Mengxing and said, Sister Mengxing, why do you say that? Perhaps I have implicated you in this matter. If it were not for me, you would not have entered the underground palace and would not have been like that. Yu Mengxing hurriedly shook her head. I don't blame you, but I have indeed let you down. Zhao Jiqing shook her head and said, This has already happened. Sister Mengxing, what are your plans in the future? What are your plans? Yu Mengxing's face suddenly turned pale. Only then did she realize that ever since she woke up, the first thing that appeared in her mind was that she felt sorry for Zhao Jiqing. As for the fact that she had lost her virginity, she did not have any resentment towards Murongyu, nor did she have any intention of resisting Murongyu. On the contrary, she was actually a little happy. In other words, not only did Yu Mingxing not have any resistance towards this matter, but she was also very happy about it. From this point, it could be seen that Yu Mingxing liked Murongyu from the bottom of her heart. Otherwise, why didn't she resist when Murongyu took her virginity? My chastity is gone. I only belong to the big hooligan. There won't be another man. But I can't let Sister Jiqing down. What should I do? Yu Mingxing's face turned pale. She was flustered and didn't know what to do. She wanted to be with Murongyu, but she didn't want to fight with Zhao Jiqing for a man. Seeing Yu Mingxing's suddenly pale face, Zhao Jiqing had already guessed Yu Mingxing's thoughts, so she said, Sister Mingxing, this time I see that you don't have any resentment towards Murong, and you don't have any resistance. No, Sister Jiqing, this time it's because we were poisoned. We had no choice but to do this. I don't have any feelings for the big hooligan. Yu Mingxing quickly denied. Zhao Jiqing shook her head and continued. Sister Mingxing, listen to me first. Zhao Jiqing looked into Yu Mingxing's eyes and continued. If I'm not wrong, you've always liked Murong, right? Yu Mingxing was shocked. Just as she was about to deny it, she was interrupted by Zhao Jiqing. Don't deny it. I believe I'm not wrong. Before this, I didn't know how to tell you. But now that things are like this, let me ask you, can you accept other men in the future? Yu Mingxing quickly shook her head and said, no. So, Murongyu is your first man and your only man. Don't you want to fight for it? Just leave silently? If that's the case, I believe you'll regret it. And Murong doesn't want to see this happen. Yu Mingxing looked at Zhao Jiqing in shock. Sister Jiqing, what do you mean? Zhao Jiqing's face was a little red. She paused and finally said, what I mean is, if you don't mind, we could become Murong's woman together. When she said this, Zhao Jiqing really couldn't continue. It was really difficult to speak. Although Zhao Jiqing had this idea for a long time, she had even asked Murongyu to consider Yu Mingxing before. However, when she said this to Yu Mingxing, she still felt too embarrassed. Sister Jiqing? Yu Mingxing looked at Zhao Jiqing with a face full of shock. At the same time, she was overjoyed. The reason why she didn't want to be with Murongyu was because she didn't want to fight with Zhao Jiqing for a man. After all, she didn't want to destroy Zhao Jiqing and Murongyu. Now, Zhao Jiqing took the initiative to say this. How could Yu Mingxing not be happy? Sister Mingxing, does this mean you agree? Yu Mingxing nodded happily. Since Zhao Jiqing didn't mind Murongyu having another woman, why would Yu Mingxing mind? Then, from now on, we are sisters. Zhao Jiqing smiled slightly, but her heart was relieved. Previously, she was afraid that Yu Mingxing wouldn't be able to face this matter and would leave. After all, liking Murongyu was one thing. If Murongyu couldn't give her a status, Yu Mingxing would most likely not be able to face this matter. Huh, two beauties, no, it should be two wives. At this moment, Murongyu's laughter was heard. Then, in a flash, Murongyu appeared beside the two women. This guy must have been spying on them just now. Otherwise, his timing was too accurate. Who's your wife? I haven't agreed to marry you. Yu Mingxing glared at Murongyu, but her face was still a little red. That's right, don't talk nonsense. Zhao Jiqing rolled her eyes at Murongyu. This will happen sooner or later. After this matter, we will go back and get married immediately. Don't worry, I will definitely give you a status. Murongyu smiled and hugged the two women on his left and right. The two women's faces were red, but more than that, they were happy. Getting married and having a status. Which woman didn't want that? Even Zhao Jiqing, although she didn't agree to Murongyu for the time being, that was because she felt that she wasn't strong enough. If she married Murongyu, she was afraid that it would affect him, so she refused. However, now that this had happened, she wouldn't refuse anymore. I haven't agreed to marry you, and it's not like I have to marry only you. Yu Mingxing's face was red as she rolled her eyes at Murongyu. Slap! Murongyu slapped Yu Mingxing's bouncy butt, then said fiercely, Other than me, who else can you marry? I am your only man. Yu Mengqing rolled her eyes at Murong Yu. You are so domineering. Haha, I am so domineering. Why? Don't you like it? Murong Yu laughed. Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing were speechless. Murong Yu is really too arrogant. It feels so good to have a woman on my left and right. Murong Yu said with a smile, and then he let out a scream. It turned out that after hearing his words, Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing suddenly showed their power, and each of them twisted a piece of soft meat on his waist. Have a woman on your left and right. Then do you want to have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Zhao Jiqing looked at Murong Yu with a smile. Murong Yu's heart trembled. He now realized that Zhao Jiqing also had the potential of a demon. 3 wives and 4 concubines is the dream of all men. Ah, it hurts. However, that's not my dream. I've always been loyal. Are you loyal? Yu Mengqing twisted Murong Yu's waist again, causing Murong Yu to grimace in pain. I've always been loyal, Murong Yu said with a determined expression on his face. Is that so? Don't you have a woman on your left and right now? Zhao Jiqing said with a smile. Murong Yu was depressed. Isn't there a reason for this? However, he only said those words in his heart and didn't dare to say them out loud. No matter what he said to a woman, the answer would always be wrong. The weather is so clear today. It seems like there are no clouds in the sky. Huh. Both of you have reached the overarching heavenly supreme celestial stage. Murong Yu first looked at the sky and praised the weather. Then, as if he had discovered a new continent, he cried out in surprise. The weather in the world of He Tu and Luo Shu was the same every day. It was always so sunny and cloudless. Both Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing had broken through to the overarching heavenly supreme celestial stage. Although they were only in the early stage, they were still overarching heavenly supreme celestials. Prior to this, Zhao Jiqing had broken through to the golden celestial stage, while Yu Mengqing was only a supreme celestial stage. After a day and night of madness, Zhao Jiqing had directly advanced by 2 large realms. As for Yu Mengqing, she was even more amazing, directly advancing by 3 large realms. Murong Yu could not help but feel envious. However, Murong Yu was not jealous. After all, both of them were his women now. The stronger his women were, the happier he was. It would be best if both of them had broken through to the Celestial Emperor's stage. Zhao Jiqing said with a blush on her face. Our strength must have improved after that incident. She did not know why their strength had improved so much. That could only be the reason. I think it must be because of dual cultivation. Let's do it again to become stronger. Zhao Jiqing rolled her eyes at Murong Yu before she fled with Yu Mengqing and said, You pervert. Have fun by yourself. We're going to take a bath. Chapter 521. You're saying that we were poisoned by the pink morning? That black dragon was the one who did it? And there's someone from the Phoenix clan in this palace? Half a day later, Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing returned after bathing. Murong Yu also told her about how they had been afflicted with the pink morning spell without missing a single word. Murong Yu nodded. That black dragon is really shameless. As a senior who's lived for who knows how long, he actually poisoned us. Yu Mengqing said hatefully. Do you remember what we saw outside the palace? There was the divine phoenix and black dragon in the flames. They seem to be fighting. They seem to be enemies. Zhao Jiqing said with a frown. The phoenix and black dragon should be enemies. This was Murong Yu's guess, but they didn't know the truth. At least, they didn't know now. The one who summoned Jiqing was the senior from the Phoenix clan. If nothing goes wrong, you should receive her inheritance. However, if that black dragon is an enemy of the Phoenix clan senior, I'm afraid there will be an accident this time. Murong Yu said with a gloomy face. I want to try. I think that if it was really that senior from the Phoenix clan who summoned me, I should be fine. But you guys, Zhao Jiqing frowned and continued. How about this? I'll go out by myself. You guys don't have to go. I'm worried that Black Dragon will harm you. What are you saying? I won't let you go out alone and risk your life. Murong Yu hugged Zhao Jiqing and glared at her. That's right. We won't let Sister Jiqing take the risk alone. Either none of us go out, or we all leave," he said with a resolute face. "If that's the case, then it's best to be careful," Zhao Jiqing said helplessly. Whoosh! In a flash, Murong Yu and the others reappeared in the palace. "Ha! Kid, that felt good, didn't it?" As soon as Murong Yu and the others appeared, Black Dragon's voice sounded in their ears. Zhao Jiqing and Yu Mengqing's faces suddenly turned red, while Murong Yu's anger soared to the sky. Murong Yu really wanted to kill this disrespectful Black Dragon. "Shut up, Black Dragon!" An angry shout was heard. It was the voice of the Phoenix Clan senior that Murong Yu had heard before. The Black Dragon was furious. He roared, "Fire Phoenix, we're just neck and neck. You have no right to scold me, and you have no right to interfere." The Fire Phoenix sneered. "The two of us have been fighting for so many years, and now this remnant soul is about to dissipate. If you don't want her legacy to end, then shut up." Sure enough, the Black Dragon shut up. Murong Yu and the other two finally confirmed that these two mythological beasts were indeed enemies. "The three of you, I'm sorry. I didn't pay attention before and allowed this disrespectful Black Dragon to attack you." Fire Phoenix suddenly apologized. Murong Yu and the others were shocked. Although they didn't know how powerful this Wufeng was, there was no doubt that she was an expert of the Phoenix Clan. Yet, she actually lowered her head and apologized to three ant-like existences. However, when he recalled Hua Feng's words, Murong Yu felt relieved. Fire Phoenix's remnant soul was about to dissipate. Once their souls dissipated, their legacy would also be cut off. Obviously, they had already seen through their own life and death. However, they didn't want their legacy to be cut off. And obviously, Fire Phoenix's legacy needed to be accepted by Zhao Jiqing. At this time, if Zhao Jiqing wasn't willing, her legacy would be cut off. After all, Murong Yu didn't believe that Fire Phoenix hadn't tried to find an inheritor for so many years. But why didn't anyone accept her legacy? Obviously, ordinary people couldn't enter this underground palace. The most important reason was that not everyone was suitable for Fire Phoenix's legacy. Otherwise, this legacy wouldn't have waited for Zhao Jiqing. Hee, I'm doing this for their own good. Look, aren't their relationship very good now? If it weren't for me, they might not be together in the future. Black Dragon's laughter spread, but it made Zhao Jiqing and the other two blush. Damn you, if I didn't come this time, the two of them would definitely die. Murong Yu cursed Black Dragon in his heart. If Murong Yu hadn't come along this time, Zhao Jiqing and the other two girls would have been poisoned by the pink morning. Even if they had lost their rationality, they would have never done it with another man. Their choice would have been to kill themselves. All right, I don't have much time left, so I'll just get straight to the point. This time, I summoned you here, or to be exact, I summoned you here because I want you to accept my inheritance. A phantom condensed in front of Murong Yu and the other two. Not long after, a beautiful middle-aged woman with flames all over her body appeared in front of Murong Yu and the other two. This was the senior of the Phoenix Clan, Fire Phoenix. Just as Fire Phoenix condensed her figure, another figure appeared in front of Murong Yu and the other two. This was Black Dragon, a tall, dark-skinned man about 3 meters tall. The moment he saw Black Dragon, Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a fierce light. He almost couldn't help but kill this shameless guy. However, he restrained himself. Even if they were only left with a wisp of remnant soul, even if their remnant soul was about to dissipate, Murong Yu was still no match for him. Kid, I can feel your killing intent. However, I advise you to put away your killing intent. You're just an ant in front of me. Black Dragon looked at Murong Yu and said indifferently. Murong Yu sneered disdainfully. One day, I'll be stronger than you. However, you won't be able to see that day. Black Dragon snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. Obviously, he clearly understood that Murong Yu was telling the truth. I wonder if you're willing to accept my legacy? Fire Phoenix looked at Zhao Jiqing with a hopeful look in her eyes. She really didn't have much power left. If Zhao Jiqing didn't accept her legacy, it would be difficult for her to find a second person to accept her legacy. The Phoenix clan is one of the most powerful divine beasts in the world. If you accept my legacy, you'll have the bloodline of the Phoenix clan. In time, your achievements won't be inferior to mine. The Phoenix clan has a longer lifespan than most divine beasts or cultivators of the same level. It can even be said that we have two lives because the Phoenix clan can undergo the Phoenix's nirvana and be reborn. Fire Phoenix was afraid that Zhao Jiqing would reject her and quickly explained the greatest benefit of the Phoenix clan. The Phoenix's nirvana. A glint flashed across Murong Yu's eyes. This was a good thing. It was equivalent to having two lives. After you accept my legacy, I can transform your bloodline and let you directly possess the Phoenix's bloodline. Furthermore, as your power increases, your Phoenix's bloodline will become more and more concentrated. In the future, your descendants will also possess the Phoenix's bloodline. Fire Phoenix was a little anxious when she saw that Zhao Jiqing didn't respond. Hearing Fire Phoenix's words, Zhao Jiqing was a little tempted. Therefore, she looked at Murong Yu and asked for Murong Yu's opinion. Murong Yu smiled. Ever since that incident, Zhao Jiqing seemed to have placed him at the center of everything. This was a good thing, but it wasn't entirely a good thing. This matter depends on you. If you're willing, then accept the legacy. If you don't agree, then we'll leave immediately. Murong Yu said with a smile. For cultivators like them, the more powerful they were, the more powerful their bloodline would be, and the more outstanding the aptitude and talent of their descendants would be. However, the Phoenix's bloodline was different from ordinary bloodlines. Although ordinary bloodlines were powerful, it was impossible for them to undergo the Phoenix's nirvana. Furthermore, once they possessed the Phoenix's bloodline, they could cultivate some of the Phoenix clan's secret techniques. It should be known that the Divine Beast clan, which had existed since ancient times, had extremely powerful cultivation techniques. Senior, I'm willing to accept the legacy. After thinking for a while, Zhao Jiqing finally agreed to accept Fire Phoenix's legacy, while Fire Phoenix waited anxiously. In that case, let's begin. Fire Phoenix seemed to be running out of time. Before she finished speaking, she waved her hand and disappeared on the spot with Zhao Jiqing. They had gone to another space to receive the legacy. Boy, I have something to discuss with you. After Fire Phoenix left, Black Dragon looked at Murong Yu. What's the matter? Murong Yu glanced at Black Dragon and said indifferently. He still had a strong grudge against Black Dragon. Boy, don't look at me with murderous intent. Although I gave you the pink morning, wasn't it for your own good? If it weren't for me, would you be so happy? Would the two of them be willing to follow you? It's not that I look down on you, but if it weren't for me, your relationship, TSK, part of what Black Dragon said was true. However, Murong Yu couldn't forgive him for giving the two girls the pink morning. With a cold snort, Murong Yu didn't even look at Black Dragon. He just turned his head away. Yu Mengqin continued to talk, but Black Dragon was furious. Boy, Black Dragon was so angry that he couldn't help but growl. What's the matter? Murong Yu glanced at Black Dragon indifferently. After that woman of yours received Fire Phoenix's legacy, her talent and aptitude will definitely be higher than yours. You must be unhappy about this, right? I now have a way to improve your talent and aptitude. I wonder if you're willing? I'm not willing, Murong Yu said indifferently, then looked at Black Dragon and sneered. If you want me to accept your legacy, you can just say it. Why are you hemming and hawing like a girl? However, even if you say it, I won't agree. Boy, this is the legacy of the Dragon Clan. Are you really not willing? Black Dragon widened his eyes and looked at Murong Yu in disbelief. I'm not willing, Murong Yu said firmly, one word at a time. Chapter 522. Murong Yu looked at He Long with disdain. So what if it's the inheritance of the Dragon Clan? There are countless inheritances in this world that are more powerful than the inheritance of the Dragon Clan. Moreover, my cultivation technique might not be any worse than the inheritance of the Dragon Clan. Hearing this, He Long's face suddenly turned gloomy. As a member of the Dragon Clan, well, he could be said to be an evil existence in the Dragon Clan, a scum. He was very clear about the inheritance of the Dragon Clan, powerful and mysterious. The Dragon Clan was similar to the Phoenix Clan. As one of the most powerful divine beasts in the world, they were extremely powerful. Their inheritance was the culmination of the efforts of countless experts in the Dragon Clan. That made them even more powerful. However, Hei Long also knew that although they were one of the most powerful divine beasts in the world, there were many experts who were more powerful than them. The Demon Clan had experts who were more powerful than them. As the leader of all living beings, the Human Clan had countless experts. Some of the experts of the Human Clan had achievements that were even more powerful than divine beasts like them. It was even difficult for divine beasts like them to reach. If Murong Yu received the inheritance of such an expert, he would indeed look down on the inheritance of the Dragon Clan. If that was the case, then the inheritance of the Dragon Clan would be severed. Of course, other than him, were there still members of the Dragon Clan in this world? There should be. The inheritance of the Dragon Clan would not be severed, but Hei Long's inheritance would definitely be severed. Severing the inheritance was something that no one wanted to see. Big gangster, why are you unwilling to accept the inheritance of the Dragon Clan? Although Hei Long is a little shameless, the Dragon Clan is powerful. After all, the inheritance of the Phoenix Clan is ordinary. If you accept it, your strength will become even more powerful. You're unwilling to accept Hei Long's inheritance? Is it because of his previous behavior towards us? If that's the case, I hope you won't make such a rash decision. Yu Mingqing's voice rang in Murong Yu's mind. She finally could not help but send a voice transmission to Murong Yu. In Yu Mingqing's opinion, the reason why Murong Yu was unwilling to accept Hei Long's inheritance was entirely because Hei Long had cast the pink morning spell on them. In Yu Mingqing's eyes, refusing to accept the inheritance of the Dragon Clan was undoubtedly foolish. Of course, she didn't think that Murong Yu was stupid. She only thought that Murong Yu was a little too impulsive. Murong Yu smiled. Yu Mingqing was only partially correct. That was only part of the reason. Apart from the inheritance of the Black Dragon, there was also the inheritance of the Dragon Clan. If it were anyone else, they would immediately agree. Even Murong Yu felt that it was full of temptation. If he hadn't been a chaotic celestial body, he would have accepted the inheritance without hesitation, even if Black Dragon had given them the pink morning. However, just now, Hichu transmitted to him, letting him know that it was impossible for him to accept the dragon race's inheritance. Of course, other than the Dragon Clan's inheritance, he could not accept any other inheritance. Murong Yu had the chaotic celestial body constitution, so he could only cultivate the chaotic celestial body record. Other than that, he couldn't cultivate a second cultivation technique. Of course, other than this kind of mental cultivation method, other cultivation methods, such as battle skills, could be cultivated. However, the most important part of an inheritance was its cultivation technique. The cultivation technique was the most important core of the entire inheritance. Other combat skills and secret skills were secondary. If Murong Yu accepted the inheritance, he would have to cultivate the Dragon Clan's cultivation technique. If it were an ordinary person, even if they cultivated the Dragon Clan's cultivation technique, it would be no problem. After all, it was the Dragon Clan's cultivation technique. However, Murong Yu couldn't cultivate it. Since he couldn't cultivate the Dragon Clan's cultivation technique, he could only cultivate their combat skills and secret skills. It was better not to accept the inheritance. Most importantly, Murong Yu didn't have the Dragon Clan's bloodline at all. Once he accepted the Black Dragon's inheritance, it was believed that the Black Dragon would change Murong Yu's constitution and make him a person with the Dragon Clan's bloodline. Just like when Zhao Jiqing accepted the Phoenix Clan's inheritance, she began to have the Phoenix Clan's bloodline. As her strength increased, her bloodline also became more and more intense. Although the Dragon Clan's bloodline was powerful, Murong Yu's chaotic celestial body was the supreme constitution. Compared to the chaotic celestial body, the Dragon Clan's bloodline was simply trash. Therefore, Murong Yu wouldn't accept the Black Dragon's inheritance. Because of what the Black Dragon had done to them previously, Yu didn't tell her the truth. Instead, he had a look of disdain. I can't accept the dragon clan's inheritance. However, if you're willing, you can give it a try. I just don't know if it's suitable. Yu transmitted his voice with a smile. Can't accept it. Yu Mengqing frowned slightly. She knew that Yu's words couldn't be changed. Moreover, she also believed that Yu wasn't an impulsive person. Kid, could it be that you've accepted an inheritance stronger than the dragon clan's inheritance? The black dragon asked with a frown. If that was the case, then his inheritance might be severed. More or less. Therefore, I won't accept your inheritance. Yu slowly said, if you're afraid of losing your inheritance, you can let Mengqing accept your inheritance. The black dragon quickly shook his head. I can give her the dragon clan's inheritance, but my inheritance isn't suitable for a woman like her. My inheritance can only be inherited by a man. Yu shrugged. I can't do anything about that. You can leave your inheritance behind and wait for a fated person. The black dragon's face was gloomy, and he didn't speak for a long time. After a long time, his eyes suddenly lit up. Kid, don't you mind doing me a favor? As long as you're willing, you don't have to accept the dragon clan's inheritance. You can cultivate all the dragon clan's secret skills and battle skills. Of course, that includes the pink morning. Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. If he could cultivate the dragon clan's secret skills, his strength would increase by a lot. Especially the pink morning. Yu didn't want to use the pink morning to harm a woman. He disdained to do so. His moral quality wasn't that low. However, the pink morning was a good thing. It was an aphrodisiac that directly affected the soul. Just imagine, if he used the pink morning in battle, then his enemies would be poisoned. Then, at the thought of this, Yu became excited. Ouch. Yu, who was immersed in his lewd thoughts, suddenly felt a sharp pain at his waist. Turning his head, he happened to see Yu Mengqing's demonic smile. You're smiling so lewdly. Have you already thought of using the pink morning to harm a certain woman? As she spoke, Yu Mengqing viciously pinched Yu's waist. The pain made Yu roll his eyes. I'm a pure person. How can I be as filthy and lowly as Black Dragon? Yu said helplessly. Black Dragon was looking at Yu with a gaze that all men would understand. However, when he heard Yu's words, black lines appeared on his face. Kid, this dragon is handsome and elegant. How can I be such a lowly person? Black Dragon looked at Yu and said unhappily, to be able to create something as evil as the pink morning, I don't even need to think to know what kind of person you are. Yu curled his lips. Mr. Black Dragon, what do you need my help with? Yu glared at Yu Mengqing and asked Black Dragon. Like the fire phoenix, my remnant soul won't be able to hold on for much longer. However, I don't want my inheritance to be severed. However, you aren't willing to accept my inheritance. Therefore, I hope that you can do me a favor and help me bring my inheritance out. In the future, find a suitable person and let him accept my inheritance. Take your inheritance away? How? Also, how do I know who is suitable to accept your inheritance? Yu couldn't help but frown. If you help me, I can teach you a technique. You can see who is suitable to accept my inheritance. Kid, if you agree, you can practice all the secret techniques in my inheritance, Black Dragon said in a low voice. Will this cause any harm to my body? Yu asked. Not at all. I only need to seal my inheritance in your body. Of course, you can check all the techniques and secret techniques in my inheritance at any time, Black Dragon said helplessly. If that's the case, I'll help you. Yu thought for a moment and agreed. After all, this was the inheritance of the Dragon Clan. It was very powerful. If Yu took this inheritance out, he could let Shenzhen or the people in Celestial Palace try to accept it. After all, it was best to keep the goodies within the family. If that's the case, let's begin. Black Dragon was overjoyed. Wait. Yu shouted and turned to look at Yu Mengqing. Mengqing, Jiqing is going to accept the inheritance. I'm afraid it will take some time for me and Jiqing to accept it. It's not safe for you to be here alone. Come into my treasure space." Yu Mengqing nodded and was immediately taken into the Hichu Luo Shu. Then, Murong Yu and Black Dragon came to another space. "Kid, relax your body. Don't resist. Later, I will compress my inheritance and seal it in your body," Black Dragon said in a low voice. Murong Yu nodded and sat cross-legged on the ground. Black Dragon also sat cross-legged in front of Murong Yu. Then, he tapped Murong Yu's forehead with his finger. In an instant, countless pieces of information flooded into Murong Yu's mind like a tidal wave. The enormous amount of information was incomparably vast, like a vast ocean. It included countless secrets of the Dragon Clan, cultivation techniques, battle skills, and so on, as well as the Black Dragon's memories and information. All of this information surged into Murong Yu's mind through the Black Dragon's hands. Chapter 5:23. Time slowly passed. Perhaps it was a few days, a few years, or even a few centuries, but Murong Yu finally opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, Black Dragon's figure had already disappeared. Murong Yu did not immediately get up. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the ground and pondered. At this moment, Black Dragon had sealed the Dragon Clan's inheritance and his own inheritance into Murong Yu's memories, which included Black Dragon's various memories. As for Black Dragon, just as he said, his remnant soul did not exist for long. This time, because of the sealing of the inheritance, his last trace of strength had been exhausted, and his soul had directly dissipated. By the time Murong Yu woke up, the Black Dragon had already disappeared from the world. Murong Yu sighed, but it was only a sigh. He did not mourn because of it. In fact, he and Black Dragon had only known each other for a short period of time. Not only did they not have feelings for each other, there was even hatred between them. Black Dragon's death was not worth Murong Yu's grief. Black Dragon was a traitor of the Dragon Clan, a member of the Dragon Clan who had already left the Dragon Clan. In ancient times, the Black Dragon was a genius among the Dragon Clan. He was very powerful and had great talent. However, because he did as he pleased, was extremely evil, and did not fit in with the Dragon Clan's ideals, he eventually left the Dragon Clan. After leaving the Dragon Clan, Black Dragon did as he pleased. He could be described as committing all kinds of evil. At this moment, the Phoenix Clan's genius, Huafeng, appeared. Unlike Black Dragon, who was extremely evil and evil, Huafeng was a person who abhorred evil. The moment she met Black Dragon, a battle broke out. However, their strength was on par, and neither could do anything to the other. After countless years of battle, both of them fell. They perished together. After perishing together, they did not immediately perish. A trace of their remnant souls remained in the world. As powerhouses of their level, even a trace of their remnant souls possessed extremely terrifying strength and vitality. In the end, Huafeng returned to her underground palace, and Black Dragon naturally followed. After countless years of fighting, their remnant souls were getting weaker and weaker. They were about to completely disappear. Thus, at this time, they stopped. After countless years of fighting, they stopped and later became friends. Murong Yu shook his head. These were the rough memories of the Black Dragon. However, their memories were too long ago. They were from the ancient times. The Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan had long disappeared from the world. It was unknown whether they still existed in the world. After the Black Dragon sealed the inheritance, its remnant soul completely dissipated. Once Jiqing fully accepts the inheritance of the Fire Phoenix, the remnant soul of the Fire Phoenix will dissipate, and the underground palace will be exposed. Murong Yu frowned slightly. This place was one of the Fire Phoenix's palaces, not an ancient sect. As for those living dead, they should be the servants of the Fiery Phoenix Earth Palace. However, the Black Dragon's memories did not contain much information about the underground palace. He only knew that once the Fire Phoenix fell, the underground palace would appear. Once the underground palace appeared, those experts who had entered the Dead Sea would all rush into the underground palace. I have to leave the underground palace before they do. Otherwise, I will become the target of public criticism. Murong Yu's worries were not groundless. If anyone came to this place and found that there was nothing in the underground palace, and someone else entered before them, would they believe that there were no treasures in the underground palace, or that all the treasures had been taken away by Murong Yu? The answer was definitely the latter. Murong Yu was not worried about a few people. However, there were hundreds of millions of experts who entered the depths of the Dead Sea. There was no lack of immortal emperors among them. With so many experts, it was super troublesome. I don't know how long it will take for Jiqing to fully accept the inheritance. Let's take a look at the Black Dragon's secret techniques first. Thus, Murong Yu began to look at the Black Dragon's inheritance. Although the Black Dragon's inheritance was sealed by the Black Dragon, it did not restrict Murong Yu from looking at it. Looking at it, Murong Yu was immediately depressed. Although he saw these secret techniques and the like, he realized that these secret techniques were not something he could cultivate. In order to cultivate them, he had to have the dragon bloodline. At this moment, Murong Yu felt that he had been tricked by that shameless Black Dragon. The Pink Morning? After looking at many of them and realizing that he could not cultivate them, Murong Yu finally saw the Pink Morning. He was even more surprised to find that the Pink Morning was not a poison, but a cultivation technique. Originally, Murong Yu thought that the Pink Morning was a poison that needed to be refined into an aphrodisiac. However, he now realized that it was a cultivation technique. A cultivation technique that Murong Yu could cultivate. The stronger the cultivation, the more powerful the Pink Morning would be. However, even though he had just come into contact with this cultivation technique, as long as he could cultivate the Pink Morning, it would be extremely terrifying. Genius. The Black Dragon is really a genius. Murong Yu kept praising the Black Dragon in his heart. He looked at the cultivation method of the Pink Morning. It was very simple. However, even though the cultivation method was simple, the Pink Morning that could be cultivated was extremely terrifying. He did not know how the evil and shameless Black Dragon had created such a cultivation technique. The Pink Morning, although it does not have any offensive power, it is more terrifying than any offensive combat technique. Murong Yu's eyes flashed as he sat cross-legged on the ground and began to cultivate. The entire cultivation technique was only a few hundred words long. Coupled with all of the Black Dragon's experience and understanding, Murong Yu had successfully cultivated the Pink Morning in less than half a day. When he opened his eyes again, Murong Yu slowly stretched out his hands. With a thought, a faint pink mist began to rise from his palms. It was the Pink Morning. However, the difference between Murong Yu's Pink Morning and the Black Dragon's Pink Morning was too great. Putting aside the Black Dragon's Pink Morning at his peak, the Pink Morning was a terrifying aphrodisiac that could even invade a saint's soul. Even the Black Dragon's remnant soul could use the Pink Morning to fill the entire underground palace. As for Murong Yu, he circulated his power, and the faint pink mist continuously dissipated from his body and spread in all directions. 1 kilometer, 1 kilometer, 2.5 kilometers, 5 kilometers. Finally, when the Pink Morning spread to a radius of 5 kilometers, it could no longer spread any further. Although Murong Yu hadn't expended much of his power, the Pink Morning was already his limit. Although it was only a radius of 10 miles, Murong Yu was still very satisfied. With a thought, Murong Yu collected the Pink Morning and continued to cultivate. The higher the Pink Morning's cultivation base was, the more terrifying the Pink Morning's power would be, and the wider the range of its effects would be. Time continued to pass. Half a month had passed. During this time, Murong Yu's strength did not improve at all. However, his Pink Morning could now spread to a radius of 100 kilometers. Its power was also several times stronger than before. Rumble. At this moment, a loud explosion rang in the air. The space where Murong Yu was located began to tremble. Soon after, Murong Yu's figure flashed, and he left the space he was in and appeared in the palace. When he appeared, he saw Zhao Jiqing looking at him with a smile. Murong Yu was slightly depressed when he saw this. He discovered that before she received the inheritance, Zhao Jiqing, who was only an overarching heavenly supreme celestial, was now a nine heavens mystic celestial. In other words, after entering the underground palace, Zhao Jiqing's strength had risen from the golden celestial stage to the nine heavens mystic celestial stage. Her strength had risen by 4 major stages. How could anyone not be depressed when they saw such a terrifying speed of improvement? Nevertheless, Murong Yu was still happy that Zhao Jiqing's strength had improved. Murong Yu opened his arms and pulled Zhao Jiqing into his embrace. Jiqing, is the inheritance complete? Zhao Jiqing blushed slightly as she nodded and said, I've fully received the inheritance. Due to the changes in my physique and the inheritance, my strength has risen to the nine heavens mystic celestial stage. However, Senior Fire Phoenix's soul has been destroyed. A hint of sorrow flashed across Zhao Jiqing's face. After all, she had fully received the inheritance from the Fire Phoenix, and the Fire Phoenix was not the Black Dragon. Although they had only been together for a few days, they still had feelings for each other. Murong Yu said slowly, Senior Fire Phoenix is finally free. You should be happy. However, after Senior Fire Phoenix's soul is destroyed, the underground palace will appear. Shouldn't we leave this place first? Do you know if there's an exit to the underground palace? Murong Yu asked. This was the most important question. Due to certain restrictions in the underground palace, Hichu Luoshu could take people in, but it could not teleport them out. The Black Dragon did not know the exit to the underground palace. Even if he knew where it was, he did not know how to open it. The underground palace is about to appear, and I'm afraid those who enter the Death Sea have already been teleported here. However, this underground palace is a supreme treasure. If I can make it acknowledge me as its master, I'll be able to control it. However, Zhao Jiqing frowned slightly. However what? After knowing that the underground palace was a supreme treasure and that Zhao Jiqing could make it acknowledge her as its master, Murong Yu was naturally overjoyed. However, although I've received Senior Fire Phoenix's inheritance and lowered the difficulty of making the underground palace acknowledge me as its master, my strength is still not enough. If I want to make it acknowledge me as its master, I still need some time. Now, there are already people who have entered the underground palace, Zhao Jiqing said with a frown. Chapter 5:24. In the underground palace of the Dead Sea. Swoosh! A figure appeared out of thin air near the treasure area of the underground palace. It was a middle-aged man who had reached the immortal realm and was extremely powerful. Ha! I finally got out of that damn place. At this moment, the immortal realm expert did not have the demeanor of an expert at all. He was in a sorry state, and his hair was messy as if he had escaped from a disaster. When this immortal monarch expert saw his surroundings, he laughed heartily without a care for his image. Although there was also a dense, deathly aura here, it was almost negligible compared to the space he was in before. What made the immortal realm expert laugh was the environment here. The space he had been in before was so dark that he could not even see his own fingers. He had no idea what kind of damn place it was. Most importantly, that damn place was simply too dangerous. Even though he had reached the immortal realm, he had almost lost his life many times. But here, there were buildings and even gardens around. How could the immortal realm expert not be overjoyed to see this place after coming out of that damn place? Treasure area? Suddenly, the immortal realm expert saw the road sign on the fork. He was shocked at first, then he was overjoyed. Treasure area? Could this be the real God's relic? If that's the case, then I've found it. Ha ha! The immortal realm expert laughed wildly. At the same time, he rushed into the path that led to the treasure area. Just as he disappeared into the forked road, several figures appeared near the forked road. Rumble. As soon as a few figures appeared, they didn't even have time to see who was in front of them before they violently struck out with their power, crazily strangling the people in front of them. However, when they unleashed their powers, they realized that they were no longer in the same place as before. Their bodies swayed, and they retreated quickly avoiding the attacks of the crowd. Swoosh! An expert discovered the treasure area. Immediately, he unfolded his body and rushed in. The rest of the people reacted a little slower, but they still chased after the person in front of them. Almost as soon as these people appeared in the underground palace, the void in the entire underground palace seemed to be constantly torn apart. Immortals who were either powerful or ordinary kept appearing in the underground palace. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of thousands of experts had appeared in the underground palace, and the number of people was still increasing rapidly. Obviously, because of the death of the Fire Phoenix, the underground palace had become an ownerless object. The underground palace that had become an ownerless object had appeared. Those experts who had been attracted to other spaces by the so-called God's Relic were also attracted to the underground palace when it appeared. Morongu did not know the reason for this. However, the continuous flow of experts into the underground palace was clearly not a good thing for him. Unless he left the underground palace immediately, or if the underground palace was under Zhao Jiqing's control, he would become the target of everyone. Several figures appeared out of thin air at the place where the Walking Dead blocked the way. Some fell within the attack range of the Walking Dead, while others fell directly among the Walking Dead. The Walking Dead's senses were very sharp. As soon as these people entered their attack range, they immediately attacked. Rumble, terrifying power was released by the Walking Dead, tearing the world apart like a violent storm. Those unlucky fellows who had appeared in the attack range of the Walking Dead did not even have time to react. They only had time to let out a shrill scream before they were killed. Among them, there were even immortal King Realm experts. There are already millions of people in the underground palace, Zhao Jiqing said with a slight frown in the palace. At this time, Morongu had closed the palace door again. Let's hurry up and recognize them as our masters. Otherwise, we will only be targeted by everyone or can only hide in the space treasure and not leave, Morongu said in a low voice. A large number of experts entering the underground palace was definitely not a good thing for him. Zhao Jiqing placed a special restriction on the palace door and said with a slight frown, "It will take some time to recognize a master. It may take a few days, or a few months, or even longer." The entire underground palace was a palace of the Fire Phoenix and was a super treasure. Although Zhao Jiqing could not control the entire underground palace, she could still control this palace. Now, they were in this palace. If they did not take the initiative to open the door, even immortal emperors would not be able to open the door from the outside. In this way, Morongu was a little relieved. At this time, Zhao Jiqing had already sat down cross-legged in the palace and began to use a special method to refine the entire underground palace. In this short period of time, more than 100 million experts had entered the underground palace. However, although 100 million experts was a lot, the underground palace was extremely vast, and those people did not appear in the same place. Therefore, the underground palace did not seem crowded. At this time, many experts had already appeared outside the palace. Bang! A loud sound came from the palace door, but it made Morongu frown slightly. Basically, Morongu did not need to look to know where the loud sound came from, because the Fire Phoenix and the Black Dragon had fallen one after another. The divine fire of the Fire Phoenix and the Black Dragon that were burning on the surface of the palace had dissipated. After dissipating, the palace looked like an ordinary palace, and anyone could approach it. However, the door of the palace was closed. Therefore, the people who wanted to enter the palace to search for treasures began to punch and kick the palace door and even the entire palace. Bang! 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 Morongu furrowed his brows when he heard the loud bangs coming from the door. After placing a soundproof restriction on Zhao Jiqing, he slowly approached the back of the palace's door. Although Zhao Jiqing said that even an immortal emperor wouldn't be able to blast open the palace's doors, Morongu was still worried. Once these people entered the palace, Morongu and Jian Wuxuan would be in danger. The attack continued. Morongu even felt the torrential power bombarding the palace. The entire palace seemed to be bombarded by the bombardment. There must be treasures in this palace. Otherwise, it would not be so well protected. Under our attacks, it is safe and sound. Morongu almost wanted to shout at the outside, "You have my treasures?" Although the palace isolated the power, it did not isolate the sound. Therefore, Morongu could hear what they were saying. This is God's relic. This palace should be the core of the entire underground palace. Maybe there is the inheritance of this sect inside. Another person said, "Talented, truly too talented." Morongu gnashed his teeth. These fellows' imaginations were truly too rich. At this time, there was nothing in the palace except for him and Zhao Jiqing. There was nothing here in the first place. The things in the underground palace were all in the treasure area. Well, in the Hichu Luo Shu. The attack continued. The people outside tried all kinds of methods, but they could not break through the palace's defenses. They could not even shake the palace door. Seeing this, Morongu finally calmed down. Therefore, he sat cross-legged not far from the palace door and began to cultivate. The pink morning. I wonder if I can transfer the pink morning. If these people are affected by the pink morning, then... Morongu suddenly felt that he had become evil. Among the people outside, there were female immortals. But most of them were men. If they were affected by the pink morning and there were no women, they could only lust. Moreover, the scariest thing about the pink morning was that it could not be removed just by releasing lust. Male and female immortals had to be mediated or their souls would be destroyed. Morongu couldn't help but shudder at the thought of those usually well-dressed and powerful people flirting with each other in public. That was simply too evil. After some thought, Morongu decided not to do so. If these people broke through the palace door and were about to attack them, he would definitely do so. God's relic. This must be the ancient sect. The immortals who survived the previous place and were teleported to the underground palace were all very excited after entering the underground palace. Their figures swayed rapidly as they pounced on the palaces, houses, and even the other areas. Their goal was the same, to obtain the treasures in the underground palace. In some places, people had already started a fight. They had not even seen the so-called treasures, but they were already fighting. This was the bad state of all living things. Everyone wanted to occupy this area for themselves. They wanted to seize the treasures that were impossible to exist in this area. Divine Weapon Vault, Immortal Vein Vault, Elixir Vault. Many experts appeared in the treasure vault, looking at the huge palaces and the plaques, filled with excitement. Rumble. Suddenly, an expert attacked, and a violent force killed a person in front of him. Rumble. The moment this immortal attacked, the other immortals attacked at the same time, and a chaotic battle began. A bunch of idiots, you all can have fun here. I'll go and collect the treasures. An immortal sneered and rushed toward the Divine Weapon Vault. Rumble. However, before he could get close to the door of the Divine Weapon Armory, countless forces had already poured down. The terrifying force blasted this expert who had reached the Immortal King realm into dust. At the same time, similar things were happening in front of the other treasure vaults. No one dared to get close to the door of the treasure vault. Anyone who did would become the target of everyone and be killed by the combined forces of everyone. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.